Dredd, turn on your transistor radio. It's our favorite program. Hooray!
This is Cursed Earth Radio.
Hello once again, Dark Judges, Desperados, and dudes in dick-shaped helmets. We're back. It's Cursed Earth Radio, the one only podcast bringing dread to the dreadless.
Broadcasting outside the walls of Mega City 1 across the Atlantic in North America, I'm Cool Johnny Cool.
And I'm Heavy Metal Kid, and today we are talking about the greatest Judge Dredd story arc, which spans multiple prods, multiple stories.
We are talking about Necropolis, and we are going to get in deep today, kids.
This is the reason we started this podcast, and we've been waiting to argue about every element of this story since the beginning.
So strap in, Jubes.
Cursed Earth Radio.
Keep listening, creeps.
So before we get started on our long discussion of Necropolis, I'm afraid that this is going to be a really long episode.
If this was like a VHS release in the 90s, it would be 2 tapes.
The 2 cassettes. It would be one of those Anchor Bay clamshell 2 cassette editions.
Oh, definitely.
That used to be the hot shit back when we were buying VHS tapes. And they're still the hot shit today, right?
Oh, yeah.
That Halloween release.
Oh.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started. I've already got enough things taking my money.
Well, so this story, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's our favorite. Collectively, we agree this is the best Judge Dredd story arc, without a doubt.
Oh, yeah, I love it. And this was the first time we'll be talking about it with a microphone in the room, because God knows we've talked about this ad nauseum.
We've argued about every element of this. We have 2 completely differing opinions on this, but we both agree it's our favorite. So that's a good place to start. But before we go into the story, there's a couple things. Wanted to mention Day of Dread.
The Day of Dread.
It was on the 7th.
Where did you go there,
September.
HMK?
We took a trip, and we were trying to get you to go, but unfortunately you had prior engagements.
The only time you would ever hear me be bummed about being on the job. But yeah, I had to go.
But in the United States, we got 2 different signings for Day of Dread at 2 different comic shops. One was in Florida, one was in New York City.
So they kept them both in Mega City 1.
Yeah, at least they did that. Unfortunately, both were pretty far from us. So it was a 7-hour drive one way. But we made the trip, we went up and we got a hotel room, and then we went to this tiny, tiny comic shop.
In Brooklyn, right?
In Brooklyn. Anybody Comics. And it was an interesting experience. It was very much the standard experience for a Dredd fan.
You and 4 other people.
There was a good 12 people there.
A good 12 people. Standing room only.
And that was a full shop, and we were the nerds, we got there early, and it was we didn't know,
Well, yeah. There's always the gamble that this might be the one. We'll get some fans.
Yeah, and there were people that we really wanted to meet, especially Simon Fraser was there, who's done all kinds of cool stuff. He's done Dredd in the Blood Brothers paperback. He's done Nikolai Dante. He did the Hell House trade paperback, which is not a 2000 AD thing, but the artwork.
I saw you had that over there, yeah.
Yeah, so we did that, and then Alex DeCampi was there, who had worked on Dredd Uprising, which is the sequel to.
I really need to read that.
And so it was cool. We got to meet them. I got a cool sketch from Simon
Fraser. Got yourself a nice Rico.
I was very, very grateful to have that. And it was cool because we got to go down. It's very rare that you can celebrate Dredd with any sort of comic shop support. So I wanted to support it. So we bought every Dredd graphic novel that they had.
All 4 of them.
That's pretty much it. There was a copy of Trifecta, Cape and Cowl, The Small House, and then Simon Fraser actually had some copies of, I think it was the Case Files 32. So we all got one of those, and but it was cool. But when I spoke to the guy at the comic shop, I said, thank you so much for doing this. I was like, it's really rough to be a Dredd fan. And he actually said to me, he said, yeah, we don't have really any readers that read 2000 AD that come here. He said 2000 AD approached us, and we agreed to do it. We just didn't know how many people were going to show up. And, there was a line, to meet them, but I did get the feeling that a lot of people were regulars. And, they were kind of like, oh, what is this about? A lot of people, I think, were buying 2000 AD for the first time, because there was a signing, and this comic shop seemed to have a really good like little community.
Well, hopefully that's a spark that lights a fire and we get at least 12 more 2080 fans.
And that's got to be how we do it.
Slow burn.
Starting to tell people about the comics, telling people about the Dredd magazine and 2080 magazine, and hopefully somebody will listen to our podcast. I really don't care, but hopefully someone does.
I'm just glad to hang out and talk Dredd.
Yeah.
Having a microphone here is just an extra thing.
It's just like being in a band. We're both in bands, and if you don't support a band that you like, if you don't drive that 3 hours to see them play, they're not coming back. If you don't buy the t-shirt when you go, they're not coming back. So that's been my approach with this stuff, is I do want to see more, and so I buy all the things. Plus, I'm a pack rat and a collector just like you are.
Well, yeah, we both have mental problems. And like, how many times have we been on shows together, our bands have been on the same bill, where the entirety of the show, when we're not on stage, is spent talking about Dredd?
Everyone.
Like, it's no joke.
Having the same argument that we're about to have here.
Yep. Oh my God. I can't even wait. So let's stop waiting.
Let's stop waiting.
I can't wait to not wait to wait.
I think that's your catchphrase now. If somebody is listening to this, I would honestly very much recommend a read-along for this.
Yeah. We're both working off our Complete Case Files 14. HMK's got the UK edition.
Yeah.
I've got the US edition, but we also have...
We have this Titan Books Necropolis
Book 2.
I just wanted to have all the versions so we could look at them.
I mean, this is our holy text, honestly.
It is. Yeah.
Mine is well read.
Mine is as well.
I think I've read it twice more for this, on top of the 10 I've already.
I've read mine once, and then I've gone through on the app, because I also purchase everything digital, because I just want to have it with me at all times.
It smells good, too.
Yeah. So if you're reading along, you would get your case files number 14, and the bulk of this podcast is going to cover the entire case files 14. We're going to try to give you the highlights. There's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah.
But before we do that, you're going to set the stage, because leading up to Necropolis, there are quite a few story arcs that play into Dredd's psychological state when this story starts.
And definitely his psychological state when we find him in the opening of Necropolis, the prelude, the dead man, is a lot of the reason why we got Necropolis. And we're going to start way back, and I'm going to give you the broad strokes. There was a story called Letter from a Democrat back in Prague 465. It was only 7 pages, written by Wagner and Grant, art by John Higgins, who I love. Originally published on the 8th of March in 86. And what we get in this is an organization called the Democratic Tendency storms a TV station in Mega City 1 to read their list of demands to the populace of Mega City 1. And they are striving for the return of democracy, to get rid of the judge system, to strip the judges of all their draconian powers, to strip the justice system completely apart, to give rule back to the people. Now, we talked earlier, storming a TV station is an actionable offense. It's a violent offense, but they can't take it anymore. The judges have gotten so tyrannical since their inception. Their powers have increased in width and breadth. Everything is a crime now. And they've tried to peacefully get democracy back in, and the judges snuff it out every time. So now they're taking their demands to the judges. Now, mind you, when they kickdoor this TV station, it's doing its live broadcast. I mean, they shoot the robot security guard, but I don't think he doesn't count as a human, so he's not.
Would you consider Walter somebody?
Actually, Walter does have designation as a human.
Okay.
He earns that after the Robot Wars.
Okay. So say before Walter gained that designation, would you say that he was not human?
Walter's special.
Again, I'm definitely not advocating.
Why can't you let me love Walter? Why every week?
I just like pushing your buttons for this robot fetish.
It's one big button called Walter.
Yeah.
Okay. So they read their list of demands, and the judges kick the door in, and they kill all 5 of the Democratic Tendency members that are in there. One member's name is Hister Hyman, and we find out at the end of this prog that the entire story is being read by her husband, Gort, via a note the judges found on her body. And he had no idea that his wife was involved in the Democratic Tendency. It was all news to him.
And that's very much a trend when you go to something like America.
Yeah.
Same thing.
This is the start of all of that.
Yeah.
So, and Judge Dredd is the person that puts Hister Hyman down. He puts the bullet in her. When the judges demand they come out, the Democratic Tendency take a vote, and they all know that the judges are going to kill them no matter what. So they're going to stand and live and die by their principles, and they do.
And that's a good example of how much this comic, this strip and this character changed since we last looked at, I think, what was it? It was Death and Death Lives.
Yeah.
And, even something like Oz.
This is 5 years removed from Death.
In that small span of time, this became a whole lot deeper.
Yeah,
it became a whole lot more adult. There's a lot of really heavy stuff happening. The idea of a terrorist organization of people who want democracy back, that's not kiddie stuff anymore.
No, we went from Dredd being on the moon with the Lunar Olympics to this. It's a big swing from those early progs that were just week to week, new villain every week.
This is modern Dredd to me. Like if you pick up 2080 now and you read a Dredd story, it feels like this.
Yeah.
Very few of them go back and feel as sort of purely, comic strip weekly as like Death and Death Lives, and even some of the stuff in the Cursed Earth still feels very comic, childish in a way.
There's a lot of like nudge, nudge, wink, wink in those, and the Judge Child and all of that. And this is the start of the switch over to social commentary within. And then there was a little bit, but it was never the main event.
It's hit you right over the head.
Yeah,
and not in a bad way. It's right there.
Yeah. So that was in March 8th. That was March 8th, 86. So that one little prog spins off into a three-parter called Revolution that was originally published from July 18th, 87 to August 1st, 87. And progs 531 to 533. And again, written by Wagner and Grant. Art by John Higgins, who also shows up in The Dead Man. And all the stuff that Carlos doesn't draw in Necropolis is John Higgins. Revolution starts off with the Democratic Tendency is now a huge organization. And they are having a meeting, almost like a coliseum. And Gort Hyman has become their patron saint, the survivor. And they're going to march on the Justice Department with their list of demands for the return of democracy to the citizenry. They want, once again, the judges stripped of all their powers. They want the Justice Department dismantled. They want to return to the vote.
And so killing, was it Hester?
Hester, yeah.
Hester Hyman created a martyr for their cause. And that's where the judges trying to push it down and the justice system, as it is, creating resistance against itself by being as harsh and as tyrannical as it is.
Yeah, and the more you shove something down, the harder it comes back up.
Which is absolutely what we're experiencing in both sides of our political atmosphere here in the United States.
Oh, yeah, totally. This is so pertinent to what's going on. So they've got Gort. He is their cause célèbre. He is the standard bearer. They're going to march. And the Justice Department, it's legal. They are allowed to peaceably assemble. And the Democratic Tendency is going to peaceably assemble. The judges hate the idea of democracy. I don't know if they hate the idea, and I'm sure some of them don't want to lose that power.
Yeah.
And
it's the fear of becoming obsolete.
Yeah.
It's the fear that we've heard Dredd voice before of if it came back, could the citizens handle it? Could Mega City handle freedom? Could they handle doing things on their own? So there's a whole lot of fear on all ends of I don't want to lose my purpose. I don't want to lose my power. I don't want the city to go out of control. We're just barely getting it under control to begin with.
But we also know from doing Oz that they have a judge system, but it's a completely different environment.
Yeah.
And Oz seems a lot nicer than Mega City 1.
I would move to Oz.
Oh, in a heartbeat. So Judge Silver tasks Dredd with destroying this march. And Dredd asks Silver, are we doing this by the letter of the law? And Silver says, on this one, Dredd, you write the law. So they go about a psychological campaign to dismantle this movement.
And as much as we associate I Am the Law with Dredd, Dredd is not a character that wants to have absolute power that he can wield to do whatever he deems like he's not this egomaniac.
No.
And putting Dredd in this situation where we're not following the law, it's do whatever you want. I think that's what has to start cracking.
Oh yeah, that's the first crack in the armor, because
everything he believes in is falling apart in front of him. He's seeing behind the scenes for the first time.
He is actively breaking the law to uphold the law.
And in so many different stories, there's always a push at some point for Dredd to be like, we want you to be Chief Justice, or they always want to give Dredd more power, and he always turns it down. He always wants to stay on the streets. Maybe part of that subconsciously for the character, if we're going to psychoanalyze Dredd, he doesn't want to see behind the scenes because he knows it's not good.
It's not pure.
You don't want to see the strings at the puppet show because then reality hits you and you can't stay in your little box.
He knows the motives are not altruistic whatsoever. And so Silver gives Dredd this mandate to take down the march. So they start picking apart the leaders. They take the first one. They arrest him in the middle of the night. I forget his name off the top of my head. On trumped-up charges. And they keep him awake all night. No food, no water. He can't sit down. So that's psychological torture right there. Another one of the leaders, they find a picture of him in a Sob Judge uniform. This is post-Apocalypse War. But it's at a costume party. So they use this photo completely out of context.
Right. So pertinent.
Oh, yeah, to sour the public on him, because the public is behind the Democratic tendency. And they show up at his door with a mob, and they have the Wally Squad on board. And the Wally Squad is the undercover arm of the Justice Department. So they've got Wally Squad agitators in amongst the actual mob, and they start saying things like, I watched you sentence my whole city deaf group to death by the Sob judges. I watched you turn over my friends and family to the Sob judges.
Wow.
They're agitating, stirring up. So he has to barricade himself in his house. He's not going to the march. He is literally barricaded in his house. They try to go after Gort Hyman, Hester's husband, but Gort is squeaky clean. He has never broke a law. And Gort staunchly believes in the Democratic tendency now, after Hester's sacrifice. So Dredd goes to his apartment, and Gort tells him, you've got nothing on me. And Dredd says, I know. You're a model citizen. In fact, those two boys you have, they're probably prime candidates for the Justice Department, coming from such noble stock. Oh. So he blackmails Gort into flipping on the Democratic tendency with the threat of forcibly enrolling his children into the the Academy, because he knows Gort is staunchly opposed to that.
So we're watching Dredd go from being a dick to being an absolute tyrant.
Oh yeah, he's total fascist dictator. He is the Gestapo now.
And it's interesting because we're still reading because we're Dredd fans. People at this time are still reading, but this is a point, and there are so many in the history of Dredd where you go like, how are they going to redeem this character? How are they going to bring this character back? Because he's gone too far.
Yeah, I remember the first time I read Revolution, and I was like, this is pretty irredeemable stuff. Yeah. This is outright fascism.
But they do it right.
They do.
Without a cheesy, turn. They never turn it into some stupid Hallmark Channel movie where his heart grows, to 10 times its size. But they take their time throughout the entirety of Necropolis.
It's such a slow burn because Necropolis doesn't happen for another 3 years.
Yeah.
But they knew what they were building to. We've got to break Dredd somehow. So the march happens. They drop off the one leader that they have had up for 24 hours with no food or no water. So he looks weak in public. He's frail. He's exhausted, sleep deprived. The main Gort is a no-show because he's on TV telling people that the Democratic tendency is bad now because he's been blackmailed into that. So you've only got, I forget her name, but there's one leader, and she's going to carry on. But the Justice Department puts the Wally Squad in the march. It's like, I forget how many tens of millions of citizens show up. They're like completely filling the speedway from left to right. Like, it's a mob. So first they use low frequency sonics to make the crowd feel uneasy. And as that's going on, the Wally Squad starts agitating by saying things like, "It's not like the judges to let this happen. I wonder what's going on." They start sowing the seeds of paranoia and fear.
God.
So one by, like, the fringes start falling off. By the time they get to the Justice Department, the core of the group is still there. It's agitated. The Wally Squad's still in there agitating. And the Wally Squad then makes first contact with the judges. They start throwing rocks, which gets the rest of it gives the judges that, they provoked. It's physical provocation. So the riot judges start attacking the protesters. And they physically beat, like, there's a great shot of Dredd with a protester in one hand, and he's got his day stick, and it's just covered in blood.
Yeah.
And they break it, and it's like tens of thousands of people are going to the cubes. And the leader, I forget her name, she says, you may win this day, but you won't win this war, Dredd. And of course Dredd says, we'll see about that. So, that being said, Dredd has become this overreaching, draconian tyrant in Revolution. How would this affect him 3 years from now?
And how different is that from what happened to Judge Rico? Rico was doing it for self-serving purposes, which to some degree is almost a little bit more respectable than someone doing it because they told me to do it.
I think, Rico saw the hypocrisy in the Justice Department.
And he embraced it.
Yeah. And he swam in it. And Dredd believed in the purity of the law. He truly believed in upholding the law. Not so much, I don't think, clubbing the citizens into submission, but upholding the law to make Megacity a better place.
They can't handle themselves.
They can't be trusted. And even Silver says that. Like, at the after the judges break up the march, Judge Silver takes to TV and starts saying things like, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so.
The whole thing's a farce.
Yeah, citizens can't handle democracy. We tried it before. We're just here to protect you from you. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is the one that broke all the laws to uphold the law, and the Democratic tendency followed. They got permits. They were allowed to peaceably assemble, and the Justice Department's the one that provoked it.
This whole thing is very similar to being in an abusive relationship where that person who is the abuser tells his or her partner, you can't live without me. You can't succeed without me. They beat down their resolve. They beat their will down. They take their self-esteem and they rip it down. And, they do anything they can to hurt them for the purpose of making them feel weak and making them see, you can't do this on your own. You need me. You need me, because it's a hostage situation.
Yeah.
And this form of government in Mega City is literally a hostage situation.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. They're in power, and the people in power do not want to lose that power. And I'm sure there are some that believe that the law is right, like Dredd, at this point. But after the events of Revolution, the cracks start to show up in Dredd's resolve and his beliefs.
It's easy to put those blinders on when you're in the moment. That denial kicks in when the action's happening.
I'm doing my job because we have to save them from themselves.
Yeah.
So that takes us to
the Dead Man.
The Dead Man.
The tale of the Dead Man.
The start of this is the prelude to Necropolis. And Dead Man originally ran in Prague's 662 to 668. 7 episodes, 54 pages. We got script by John Wagner, art by Will Simpson and Wendy Simpson for chapters 1 through 4. And Jeff Anderson took over for 5 through 7. So
this is a good place to start reading, because knowing all of this background is important, but you will have no trouble if you start at the beginning of Case Files 14 and you start with the Tale of the Dead Man, because it gives you just enough to understand exactly what's going on. I didn't have any trouble because I read this first.
This was
I haven't even read some of those that you mentioned. I read this one first, and it's perfectly clear. And that in and of itself is a pretty masterful writing job when you can take all of that 3 years worth of things, incidents, 3 years worth of stories, and things that this character have gone through, and kind of build on that story, but allow people to jump in. It's pretty well written.
Yeah, and it opens really jarring.
We see a mysterious man with a giant chin in a cowboy.
He looks like a California raisin from hell.
And it's got your Clint Eastwood vibe. It's the High Plains Drifter.
Yeah.
Who is this man? Well, we assume it's Dredd. I when I read this, I had no problem figuring out. Yeah, has to be Dredd.
We jump right into this internal monologue on the next page, and it's obviously Joe. But Joe, as we see him at the start of Tale of Dead Man, has seen some shit. Like, he is a horror show.
And we find out that he took the long walk. And it tells us that in the first couple pages. And if they were trying to hide the fact that this is Dredd, if it was supposed to be a mystery, they ruin it because on page 3 it says, see a letter to Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
So we pretty much know. But for anyone who has not seen the Stallone movie or isn't familiar, and I think maybe we even covered this, we covered The Long Walk. But
yeah,
again, it's when a judge runs out their usefulness, loses their abilities, or just decides they want to retire, they can take the long walk, go out into the cursed earth, and give law to the lawless. But figuring out why Dredd has taken the long walk, if you haven't read all those other stories, is very interesting. And we start going into some flashbacks right off the bat.
And we go right back to the Democratic March.
Yeah.
And what was it? What's the guy's name? George Shelby? Yeah, that's it, George Shelby. Dredd is reading this letter from a child, because children can write the Justice Department, and I think it's for a school project. And this child says that George Shelby was on the Democratic March, and a judge hit him over the head, and he's still not right yet.
And this letter, as we go forward in Necropolis, this is the letter, this tiny piece of paper, broke Dredd.
It was the final nail in the coffin.
He was probably going through these letters at his desk that we've seen, completing paperwork. This is just part of the job. I'm gonna send some canned responses. But as he read this, it built on all of the things he's been through, and it starts to break his resolve. He decides he doesn't really want to be part of the system anymore.
Well, I mean, when you look at, now that you know about Revolution, that's some pretty underhanded stuff. And I think he is finally forced to confront what he did. And it's all on his hands.
And he's literally forced to confront it, because what we find out is the thing that led up to the long walk is that he had to go train a new rookie, a rookie judge. And when he goes to meet this judge, he's already on the brink. You can tell as it starts that he's just kind of telling himself, there's that internal monologue, and he's saying, I don't really even know if I'm in the right state of mind to take a rookie out. And we know from reading before that as someone graduates from the academy, the last thing that they need to do is they need to go out with a senior judge on an evaluation, and it's a one-day thing. It may even be one case. It's very quick. It's that one day they wear the rookie helmet, and they either pass or fail in that one day. They don't have time after 15 years to give you this long evaluation period.
It'll either be your first day or your last day.
Yeah, and so when Dredd goes to see who this new rookie is, in a fragile state of mind, anyways, he sees himself.
Mm-hmm. Who is it?
It's Kraken.
And who is Kraken?
Kraken is our favorite Judge Dredd clone.
He is one of many.
And he comes from the line of Judda, which we covered in Oz. And if you're listening to this as your first episode...
Oz Progcast.
See Oz Progcast, or just know that they were homicidal religious zealots made from the genetic stock of Fargo, which is Dredd's biological clone father.
Well, they were made from the stock of the original Council of Five,
Yeah.
but
This one is
Kraken happens to be from the Fargo line, which begot Dredd and Rico
and you can't
Kraken.
deny the chin.
and Rico.
There's another Rico. So Dredd sees that this is a clone of himself. He realizes that Kraken is one of the Judda. And Kraken's first response, he's this, fresh-faced, large-chinned recruit. And he, Dredd's a god to these cadets. And Kraken, it's kind of pleasure to serve under you. And Dredd won't even acknowledge him. Dredd immediately starts chewing out Odell, who is the senior judge, who's kind of heading up. I'm assuming this recruit. He's transferring this.
Well, he's got to be
Dredd.
from the academy.
Yeah,
and you got to understand, Dredd was almost murdered by the Judda. The entire Justice Department was almost murdered by these giant homicidal Easter egg men from Ayers Rock. Why on earth, in any sane rationale, would you want to put anybody associated with that under a badge and put them on the street?
Well, and there's the dilemma is that the Fargo stock created Dredd. Dredd is the ultimate.
It also created Rico.
It did. And we will argue a lot on this podcast. And if we had one about the Dredd Rico...
50-50.
So Johnny believes that Rico went bad because there's this 50-50 ratio. And you do happen to completely ignore the fact that before Rico went bad, Rico fell in a pit full of radiation and got brain damage. And even Joe... Even our friend Judge Dredd has said in the Blood Brothers trade paperback, he says, I don't know what happened to Rico. It could have been the brain damage. It could have been that he lay down there for an entire day in rads. Now, Johnny tends to believe that they're just either good or evil from the start.
Well, I think there's some... It's like Warhammer 40K. There's a genetic flaw in every Primarch, right? I think that there's a recessive gene somewhere in that Fargo DNA. And it's a crapshoot. It's a 50-50.
And this whole story is very much an argument of nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
Because from the beginning of Rico's interaction with Dredd, these cadets don't have a father. Especially someone like...
The Academy is their father.
The Academy is their father. Now, Kraken had Morton Judd as his father, and basically his Christ figure. They worshipped Morton Judd, but the Justice Department has erased that memory. From Kraken.
Here's another point of conjecture for this. We don't know if Morton Judd spliced any of his genetic material into the Fargo cloning for his Judda.
Right.
So no matter if they wipe his memory, if that Judd DNA is in there, he's still gonna have Judd's tendencies hardwired.
Right, but and I definitely agree that genetics plays a role, but the question here is, do we believe that our genetic makeup makes us who we are? Do we believe that it is our environment, or is it a combination of both? And this is the interesting back and forth that we have through this entire prog.
But we have to remember, we're talking about clones here. So their DNA has been altered.
But I'll say, clones only matter if you believe in God and the soul, to me.
Genetics.
I would eat a cloned burger right now. It probably tastes just as good as a regular burger.
But I would too. But this is a breathing, thinking clone under a judge helmet.
But if you analyze a clone under a microscope, is it the same as a human?
Depends. Morton Judd made this clone. Morton Judd liked to screw with DNA.
So, as we move forward, Dredd meets Kraken and basically gives him a very cold reception. Doesn't want anything to do with him, really.
No skin off my chin.
Yeah,
nudge, wink, wink.
It's interesting because he's what's the meaning of this? Why are you giving me this rookie? And then he says, well, Dredd, we assumed you'd be the best one for the job. It's the bloodline. And then Dredd's like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. But it's clearly not fine.
No, and we'd have to talk about this, like, the Council of Five is, before Dredd gets to the rookie, is talking about Dredd's current state. They know that he is soured on the law. They're talking about one of the judges mentions there's always surgery. They're talking about altering Dredd.
They'll do anything they have to keep the machine running.
Well, even Silver says Dredd is a figurehead. He has become a symbol to the people. And they're discussing any option they can to keep Joe in the fold. He won't take a desk job. It'll be the long hike. It'll be the hike.
Yeah.
The question is, can we afford to lose him? So I think they're setting up Joe to the conclusion they want him to take.
And he realizes this in a way when he sees Kraken. It pops into his mind, am I training my replacement?
Yeah.
And Joe seems to have a legitimate fear of being replaced, of being obsolete. His purpose for so long has been the job and what he does. Now he doesn't even believe in the job.
Yeah.
And this is sort of just being pushed further.
In the first 10 pages of Necropolis, his entire value system has been shaken to its core. Everything he has ever believed in has been called into question, and he's finding out that maybe he did it wrong. Maybe his faith was ill-placed.
And so now he's struggling with the task of evaluating someone who's a complete, fresh-faced version of himself, who's fresh out of the academy. And the ideals that you have when you come out of the academy, this story hits on that. They change pretty quickly when you hit the streets, whether it's for better or worse. But Kraken only knows what he's learned in the academy, and this is his first day. And things will change quickly for both Kraken and Dredd on this run, and they'll both be altered forever.
They have a hell of a first run.
And Kraken himself is exemplary. He has no flaws. And Dredd's watching this, seeing that every task he puts Kraken up to, he exceeds the expectation. You know, if it were any other rookie, if it were anyone else, he would be passed immediately.
And I'll be the first to agree. There's no way Joe can objectively judge Kraken.
And that's the issue here is
the Council of Five knows that, though. That's why all of this is set up.
You think this whole thing is set up?
I think it's them corralling Joe into taking the walk.
I think I disagree with that. Because I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to have a plan B. But they want Joe. They want Joe on the streets. But
well, they're going to get Joe on the streets one way or the other.
So for the entirety of the evaluation, the Justice Department, they're watching. They're monitoring everything. And they're watching Kraken take every challenge, and it's perfect every time. They track down some firebombers, and Kraken's just a complete badass.
Undeniably, I mean, he's perfect. He does everything perfect. It's Joe watching his younger self handle this, and Kraken in execution of the letter of the law is pretty flawless for the most part.
But what they notice is that Dredd's not on his A game.
No. Dredd is somewhat preoccupied,
and it's everything going on in his head. I think much more so than his fear of what Kraken might become, because that's his thought is the Judda, is that training still in Kraken? But regardless of whether or not we agree on the fact that Kraken is or is not susceptible to that history, the main issue here is the lens through which Dredd is seeing Kraken.
Oh yeah,
he's seeing Kraken perform perfectly, this robot, this thing that they created that follows every order, that does everything perfectly. And Dredd no longer sees that as being a good thing, because what happened to Dredd is he was Kraken. You know, he followed every order perfectly. He executed everything. He was cold about it.
Mm-hmm. And look what happened.
So things get even more complicated because they answer a call, and there are members of the Democratic fringe who have been holding hostage this building.
Yeah.
And Dredd meets up with Judge Morph, who is on the scene already. They've been working, trying to get these hostages to go free. And it's interesting, you get some of this, like, judge back and forth. They're like, hey, why? If you believe in democracy, why don't you put it up to a vote and let the hostages go free? It really kind of reminds me of, like, the sort of thing you hear people say, like, oh, if you don't like this country, why don't you just go back to Africa?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is that people say, this real simplified version.
The black and white, there's no gray.
Yeah. And so we find out that Morph was the judge that was the overseer of Dredd's rookie run.
Yeah, he was Dredd Sr.
And I start to realize in this specific story how important that judge is to a cadet.
Yeah, Morph definitely framed Joe and how Joe would look at the streets when he was when he went full eagle.
Yeah, and there's a section here where Dredd wants to throw Kraken in, and Morph basically says, or Dredd basically says, throw him into the deep end. That's where we get that classic line now, because
it's all deep end.
Yeah, because of the 2012 film, they dug back and found that. But Morph says, well, I think I said something more like, what was the term that he used? But basically, they throw Kraken in the deep end to see how he does. And this is what Morph did to Dredd. But Morph really did this from a place of support. And Dredd is like, I want to see you fail. Go fail, Kraken. Go prove to me that what I already know, that you're not going to pan out. That you're flawed. And this keeps coming back through this whole thing, Johnny. For me, it was like right out there on the page that it is very much nature versus nurture, but the nurture element of you meet your father for the first time, essentially. And when Dredd met Judge Morph, as we see later on in the story, it was a much warmer reception, a much more supportive thing than meeting the person who's there to evaluate you, saying, You're not a judge.
Well,
you're never going to be a judge.
In Joe's defense, Morph didn't try to kill him and the entire Justice Department previously.
And now, I would hate to bring back some of Judge Dredd.
Oh no, Dredd is not. Dredd is no saint.
I just mean, he's murdered millions of people at this point.
Were you here for the revolution?
He launched a nuke. He's launched a nuke at the South. Not that was unwarranted to some degree, but he did kill a lot of innocent people.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination is Joe innocent.
So this is my favorite scene with Kraken as like badass Kraken, because his way of taking out these protesters is he puts on the handcuffs, locks them in, drops his gun, and says, all right, I'm coming in to negotiate. And everyone's standing around going, oh, this is a rookie mistake. This is a bad idea. And then Kraken goes in, and through absolute, perfect utilization of his training, he manages to disarm one of them and murder every single one of them while he's still in handcuffs.
How much of that was Justice Department training, and how much of that was the Jetta system still running in the background?
Well, he didn't grab a giant fork and try to
flay them. I don't see one. So,
but he comes out of this trial. He goes in. He wipes them all out. He saves the hostages. This to me is Dredd's breaking point. When Dredd's ego and Dredd's own fear, from my perspective, I know it's different for you, comes into play, because Kraken comes out still in handcuffs. I mean, he's this hot shot cadet comes out still in handcuffs, and Dredd even says, I saw 20-year men
forgetting themselves,
and they applaud Kraken.
Yeah.
And then Morph, who is Dredd's, basically his father, says, you got a good one there, Dredd. And there's this panel the chin. It says, "You got a good one there, Dredd. He's going to be great one day if you let him go." And then just as an afterthought, he says, "Might even be better than you."
Yeah,
and you see, it's Carlos and John Wagner directing us to Dredd's own ego. You see the chin, and it tightens a little bit.
I do agree that some of that's there, but I think the entirety of this run is Dredd seeing how hard he has to push Kraken until that Jutta raises its head again.
Well, and Dredd says that at one point, but I always keep in mind that Dredd is narrating his own story.
Yeah.
It's from Dredd's perspective. And that's what makes this such a great storyline anyways, is that it allows you to have this argument. It allows us to talk about this because, for half of it, Kraken's narrating. For half of it, Dredd's narrating. And so there's never like an overlord. There's never like an all-seeing eye telling us what they're feeling.
A third person driving it, so.
And, Dredd, we know that Dredd and literally every human being on the planet is capable of that rationalization. We see Kraken do it. We see Dredd do it. And so, as he pushes forward with this evaluation, that should have, if he were following the letter of the law, Kraken passes right there and he goes out onto the streets.
Well, no, he's got, it's a 24-hour evaluation.
It can be 24 hours.
This one's going to be.
Dredd is going to push it for 24 hours.
Like I said, he is seeing how hard Kraken has to be pushed for the Jutta. And Dredd knows it's still in there. It's buried.
Dredd believes wholeheartedly that it's still in there. But
I believe wholeheartedly it's in there.
So I'm of the opinion that Kraken's entire future would have changed.
You have to be, though. Given your profession, you have to.
Given my place as a human being that believes in the good of all people.
The Kraken is genetic product.
So is Dredd. So is Rico and Good Rico.
But you know what? I'm assuming that Dredd didn't have the Morton Judd meddling. Because the Jutta were purpose-built.
But you're assuming...
I'm assuming...
that there was Morton Judd meddling. It never said that Morton Judd went in and switched up and made new Coke. It's saying Morton Judd took some Coke, took Coca-Cola, and created and made his own...
But it also says that Morton Judd killed the tech judge he brought with him that was doing the cloning because he knew he could do it better.
He wanted to accelerate the process. He had a revenge mission.
He was making murder machines.
So here's what Dredd does to Kraken. I'm saying does to Kraken because this is a fucking dick move too here. They go out, on a few more, calls, and then Dredd takes Kraken. This is the most cynical dickhead thing I've ever seen Dredd do. One of the many.
Really? Yeah, after discussing revolution?
To a person. He takes Kraken out for a hot dog. And you see...
He does.
You see...
Is it really a hot dog? Isn't it some megacity equivalent?
It's a hottie. He takes he takes Kraken out for a hot dog, and they're standing there together. And I actually had a kind of a revelation, and of course it fits my narrative. So he takes him out for a hottie, and they're standing there. And I think this is one of the great scenes in this entire prog. He buys Kraken his first his first anything out in Mega City.
Well, because Kraken couldn't be let out in Mega City.
So they're eating together, and Judge doesn't want to eat a fucking hot dog.
No.
But Judge starts saying to Kraken, I think you need to know how these people live. And Kraken says, they eat this? And Dredd basically says, they eat it, they shove it up each other's asses, they grind it into a pulp and put it on their faces and call it makeup. These people do anything. And then Dredd starts to basically say to Kraken, maybe we're too hard on these people. Maybe we should... And what I found interesting about this is Kraken hears this, and he says, Dredd's trying to get me to break. He's trying to get me to go against my training, and I won't do that because I'm a judge. But what I really believe is Dredd believes this.
Oh, yeah. Do you not see the parallels between this and Judge Minty?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, this is Minty's speech to Dredd.
Yeah, Dredd
before Minty takes the walk.
Dredd's... So it's interesting. Kraken thinks he's just trying to get me to back down on what I believe. And
Dredd's being candid and honest.
But Dredd also knows that Kraken that Kraken believes he's trying to break him. So it's, to some extent, one of the few times that Dredd has probably been able, aside from, I think, Judge Morph. You get the sense that Judge Morph and Dredd have talked about this.
Yeah.
But Dredd's being honest with Kraken.
Oh no, I completely agree.
And had Kraken said to Judge Dredd at this point, maybe you're right, would Dredd have failed him? Because he would have had to.
Honestly, I think Dredd was going to fail him anyway.
Catch-22.
Yeah, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But I think Dredd was going to fail him because he knew and he believed that the Jada training was still in there. And it's like a switch you can flip. And he the whole thing is him trying to flip that switch to see what it's going to take for him to go berserk.
And I would agree with you, except Kraken is pushed and pushed and pushed to the limit and does not break.
He does. Joe sees it and he says, no,
I don't think so. I don't see that as being a break. But
sidebar.
We'll get there, yeah.
The Clegg? Like, what the hell?
Yeah. So I even made notes about that. There are people that they're arresting, and it's just one panel, but it's someone dressed as a Clegg and someone dressed as an elephant.
I think it's two guys dressed as an elephant.
They were clearly having sex.
Yeah, because the Kraken's got the guy in the Clegg suit handcuffed around a pole. The guy in the Clegg suit has his pants around his ankles. The guy, and it looks like it's got to be a two-person elephant costume. They are just in all this dark, like this really thought-provoking everything. 2008 he goes, yeah, but there's this Clegg cosplay. There's some yiffing going. I am assuming this is Mega City 1 furries.
That was my thought
totally.
too.
And this is before furries were furries. This is 80. No, this is 90. Cleggies. So no, I think Dredd is in Minty's position. And if you've not read Judge Minty, it's one of the earliest progs. It's I think the first year.
Yeah.
And I think even then they were trying to hint at, maybe this isn't the right way for society to go. They were kind of playing that card early.
And Minty said when you get old, you start getting strange notions. Like, maybe people aren't so bad. Maybe if we treat them with kindness, the good in them will come out.
And then he takes a long walk.
And he takes a long walk after hesitating, getting shot, and realizing, I can't think like this if I'm going to be a judge. I'll get myself killed. Yeah. I need to get out of the game.
Yeah, he knew. And if you haven't, look up the Judge Minty fan film on YouTube. It's really good. So, whole night, Dredd is putting Kraken through the grinder, putting pressure on him to see where he breaks, and the Jada comes out. And
from your perspective, and from Dredd's perspective.
From the correct perspective.
From my perspective, the entire night, Dredd is saying, you're going to fail, and I know it, and I'm just here to watch it. Which is totally unlike any sort of response that our pal Judge Morph gave Dredd when he was watching him. And this brings us to Morph.
Yeah, because after the great furry debacle...
Code 99 Red is called.
And what is Code 99 Red?
Judge in trouble.
And who's the judge in trouble?
It's Judge Morph.
So Kraken and Dredd proceed to the scene, and we get there... And it's two punks, and they got the best of Morph, and Morph is down and bleeding out.
And at this point, Dredd's shook, and he's briefly humanized in a big way.
Yeah, it's one of the only times we really see remorse or just grief.
There's some real intense human Dredd moments in this.
Yeah,
where he breaks. It's like. He stops being a judge at this point because his father has been shot.
He's gotten more. He's by Morph. Morph is bleeding out. And he said, I just pulled him over to write a ticket. Two creeps shot him. What a dumb way for a 40-year man to go.
Yeah.
And Kraken pursues. And here it is. This is the first crack in the armor. The first Joe sees it. Dredd is in grief. Morph's bleeding out. And what does Kraken say?
He says, let's get going. Come on, old man.
And then he says, you're wasting your time, old man. He's gone.
And this is it, though. Judge Dredd is not functioning as a judge.
No, he is totally outside of that now.
And that's the thing. Are we saying that Kraken is breaking because of the Judda? Because, 6 months earlier, prior to all this, that was Dredd.
Yeah,
Dredd. There's no indication for me that this is some horrible Judda thing coming through. It's Kraken sees a dead man there. It's just a dead judge, and Kraken sees two people getting away, And Kraken's almost, he's starting to resent Dredd because Dredd's there evaluating him, but Dredd's clearly not in his top form. And so, he's scrutinizing him, and now he's dropping the ball on what to Kraken is just, these guys killed a judge, let's get him.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as him breaking.
It's not him break, it's the start. Where he's starting to see it bubble up.
What we're really seeing is Dredd dealing with himself.
Yeah.
Literally, figuratively, story-wise,
Oh yeah, he's looking at his younger self. Because then he flashes back to his rookie run with Morph. And I don't know if he's kind of regretting how he acted on his rookie run and how he acted subsequently throughout his tenure as a street judge. But and we both know Joe's in a different place on this. Like he's on the way out. I think he knows. I think even he knew before this rookie assignment that he was going to take the walk. Like he was just kind of disillusioned.
By Justice Department standards at this point, like Dredd, he's broken, he's malfunctioning because he's human.
Yeah,
he's feeling.
Yeah, he's hitting that wall the Minty hit,
and he's having this flashback of Judge Morph. As it's pretty sad, Morph is dead. Dredd and Kraken are in pursuit, but Dredd's flashing back to this point where Morph almost fell off of a roof, and Dredd saves him. And Morph says, "Oh, thanks. I'm not as good as I used to be." And Dredd says, "You're still a fine judge, sir." And to me, what this is also showing the difference between your father raises you and says to you, "You can be something.
Mm-hmm.
You're good. You've got this loving. You can call it loving." Versus what Kraken's getting is you're a piece of shit. What your history is damns you. And I mean that's really important, to see. And I even thought, honestly, because I don't just see Dredd as this complete asshole in the story, but I thought it may even be Dredd coming to another realization of how broken he is to an extent of it was different for me. Because he even wavers a little bit with his opinion on Kraken throughout this thing.
Well, yeah, he respects the kid's ability, his ability to pull it off to the letter of the law. He shows no fear, does everything by the book.
It's just so important to have a mentor and a father figure to a degree that it can set you up.
No, I
totally
agree with that. But I also know the Jedda's history, and I know that Kraken was made for murder. Kraken was created for no other purpose, like all the other Jeddah.
Like all the other judges.
The Jeddah, to kill every judge in Mega City 1. That's what they were bred for. They were genetically engineered to murder every judge in Mega City 1.
But there has to be a parallel between Kraken being made to destroy an entire city and Judge being capable of destroying an entire Mega City of the Sov judges. Dredd was bred to be able to send a nuclear bomb across to a city full of men, women, and children, and enemies.
Oh, yeah.
And their upbringings were not so different. The difference for me is Kraken's was built on this. It's interesting. Kraken's backstory is built on vengeance, which is this emotion.
Yeah.
And yet here is Kraken. It's been brainwashed out of him, and he's operating on pure mechanics. Versus Dredd, who was created to operate on pure mechanics, and now he's flipped. And he's operating on emotion. It's this total mirror image mind fuck that they do in this story. It's amazing. It's great.
And that's why it's so fun to talk about.
It is. Because it's this very conflicted. It has a lot to do with Dredd struggling because he's starting to believe there's good in people. But now, even within that, Dredd's pushing back and saying...
It's immediately tested because...
I can't believe there's good in people. This guy's fucking Jeddah. So he's Minty, but he's fighting against the Minty in himself. And it's like Dredd's really broken.
He did just send a nuke through to kill the Jeddah.
He nukes quite a few people in his career.
In his defense, the Jeddah were bred for nothing but murder.
I will say secretly, maybe not so secretly, he's starting to believe that people can change, and I really think if his reaction is, it's like it's reaction formation. I feel this strong emotion that I'm not comfortable with, this feeling of maybe people can change, and I'm feeling it so strongly and I'm so uncomfortable with it that I have to push back as hard as I can and say, no, people can never change. And that's very damaging to Kraken's psyche going forward. It sets Kraken up for the horrible fate that he suffers.
One of genetic manipulation sets Kraken up for that.
I can't get on board with that.
I know you can't.
Because Dredd is a genetically manipulated clone.
I'm also operating under the supposition that Morton Judd doctored.
And we don't have that. We don't have that data.
We don't. But
we don't have that
do you
data.
honestly think Morton Judd wouldn't have fucked with the cocktail?
Fargo is the perfect stock.
But Fargo kicked him out of Mega City 1 because he didn't want him making sheep for people.
But don't you think it takes away from the original intention? It does for me anyways. The intention of the Jeddah, which was you take the same individual. That's what makes it so powerful, was Dredd is being faced with a whole bunch of other Dredds and some other guys. That it's the same person, but it's now been set in a different direction of murder for this religious reason. And that to me is more powerful than he just took some of Dredd's stuff and added some stuff, because now Dredd's facing his own nature.
But remember, Judd said...
Or his own nurture. I'm sorry, his own nurture.
We can make citizens that are compliant and docile as cows. So, do you honestly think that he would have made the Jeddah and not manipulated their genetics to follow him implicitly?
So here's the other thing. These Jeddah that are coming through would have been the OGs. These are the guys that are big enough, that trained long enough to come through.
Yeah.
So do you think that Judd messed around for a while and then... I think these were the original gues.
Oh, there has to be
these were the OGs.
A family tree of this, because he didn't just disappear for a month and come back with murderous Easter eggs. He had been off the grid for decades.
So here's...
Because this happened... The Jeddah saga started when Fargo himself was going to execute Judd for trying to kill him. So, and that's, 20 years removed from Dredd first hitting the streets. And Dredd been on the streets for 20 years when we started that, so...
Oh my God.
What?
We're 1 hour into this, and we're not even to the dead man. So...
All right.
Moving forward. I could go forever. I love this discussion. So moving forward, though, they're chasing these guys down.
The guys that killed Morph.
The guys that shot and killed Morph.
Kraken takes one of them down.
He takes one of them down, apprehends him, and then Dredd goes after the other guy and gets his claws on him.
Yeah, and Dredd is painfully human in this moment.
Dredd is Batman in this moment.
Oh yeah, he's going... They're at the Zoom station, the subway.
He wants justice.
Yeah, and no, Dredd wants revenge right here. Dredd wants revenge. He is gonna shove this jerk into the oncoming Zoom train.
And he's holding his head over and he says, "The man you killed was worth 1,000 of you." And this guy says, I didn't kill him. And Dredd said, "You were with him. Good enough."
Yeah.
And I believe Dredd's intention is to take the guy's head off.
Oh yeah, Dredd is not justice right now. Dredd is wrath.
Yeah, he certainly
Dredd is wrath and furious vengeance.
And there's a complete reversal now, because Dredd's unhinged.
Yeah.
Dredd's cracked. He's going to murder this guy. And so his own rookie has to scream at Dredd, "Stop," in the name of the law.
Yeah, and I honestly, I do think that's what kind of jolts Dredd back into his senses.
Yeah, because he listens. And that's the interesting thing is when Kraken says, "Come on, old man, we've got to go," Dredd doesn't protest, and he goes. And again, stop in the name of the law. And he goes because he knows
it's like his Pavlovian keyword.
He's losing his shit. The training that he's had is starting to crumble.
And what is he like? He pulls the guy away from the Zoom train at the last second and then just shoves him into Kraken and says, "You deal with him, rookie."
Deal with it, yeah. And, they're brought up as machines, and Dredd's, evaluation was just a single day. And Kraken's evaluation is just a single day. And when you think about I thought about how sad it was. The idea that you're brought up as a machine for 15 years in the academy, to quote Anthrax. And the closest thing that Dredd can call a father, or that Kraken can call a father, is this judge that evaluates whether or not you're a good enough machine. And that's a really sad state.
Yeah. And if you fail, you're done.
If you fail, you're like you can be part of the actual populace of Mega City, but what do you have?
Yeah.
I'm a failed judge.
Yeah.
There's nothing for you there.
So the other judges come up, and we see them drawing the chalk outline around Morph. Morph is still in the middle of the street. I'm assuming that whole sequence took place over like a minute or two.
Yeah.
So, Dredd's back, and they're photographing the crime scene. They've got Morph outlined, and it's just a horrific picture of Morph. Like, he's just mouth still agape, and the judge is there. They ask Dredd, "You were his rookie, weren't you?" And Dredd just, yeah. And so he's in grief, but he is no longer showing. His cards are now played to his chest now.
And he's having continues to have these flashbacks, advice that Morph gave him. The one that we always talk about is that Morph and Dredd at some point, and I'm assuming this is when Dredd was older and he started to feel this entire ideology crumble. He asked Morph. I think he went and talked to Morph about it. And Morph basically said, all good judges have that moment when they question whether or not what we do is right or wrong. And Morph gives him fatherly advice, but it's terrible advice. He says...
You followed it.
I do follow it. I follow this on stage. But Morph basically says, when you start thinking about all of these things, go make your boots one size smaller, because you will curse those boots. They'll give you so much pain and so much irritation that you won't have time to think whether or not what you're doing is right or wrong. You will just follow your training. And it's like this, fatherly advice, but it's horrible advice.
Oh, it is.
And
how's it working out for you?
It's working out fine for getting over all the stage issues that you might have of losing your place in the song, or because we talked about how you need to be on autopilot sometimes.
Yeah.
To get through a show,
especially if you're racked with crippling anxiety.
Yes, that would also. I think that would be a good thing. But in terms of using these tight boots to help you not question whether or not your actions are good or not, it's terrible advice. And then Dredd has this pathetic realization when he sees the team come and they load Morph up for recyc, and Dredd basically says, there he goes, a pathetic, sad old man in tight boots, one size too small, nobody cares.
Justice system won't stop.
Yeah. It's real sad. Like, it's Dredd losing a father figure, but also realizing that he is just another tired old man in tight boots. And, it's... Kraken approaches Dredd and basically says... confronts him.
Yeah.
Because Kraken has done everything perfectly. Everything as he was trained to do by the Justice Department. And he's being scrutinized by Dredd. And Dredd's really at his worst here.
Oh, yeah. We have never seen Joe like this.
And Kraken says, you were a good judge, but your time's over. And he confronts him. He's pissed.
Yeah.
Fuck you, old man. I'm out here doing everything, and you're watching me with this scrutinizing eye. And he basically...
Well, he says he's going to lodge a complaint, and Dredd just says, you do that, rookie. Or I'm going to put that in my report.
Yeah. And again, you can say what you want about Kraken losing it here, but all Kraken does is tells him he's going to lodge a complaint, which is absolutely something Dredd would have done.
Oh, yeah.
Which is absolutely something, as you read the new Rico stories, something that Rico does as his first, one of the first thing that the new Rico does when he gets out on the streets is he starts lodging complaints against these judges that have been in the game for a long time. So it's not out of character of Dredd to do this thing that Rico's doing, but Dredd is seeing everything from this lens of a human being.
Yeah.
And if
maybe we do go too far. Maybe we, and I know I have gone too far.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all wrong.
I just feel when I look at this, I see the what ifs. The what if Dredd had mentored Kraken the way. It's almost a Dexter argument, What if Dredd had mentored Kraken the way
Morph did him?
That Morph did him. We might have seen something different.
And I will be the first to totally agree that Dredd has preconceived notions of Kraken because he is fresh off dealing with these psychotic Easter eggs with their murder forks.
Yeah.
Kraken and Dredd get into it. Dredd's done with it. So Dredd goes in front of the council and gives his assessment, and he fails Kraken.
Yeah. He fails Kraken, which to a normal judge means, well, you're going to be out on the streets.
Yeah,
you can be, part of the general populace. You can go run a hot dog shop somewhere.
You can go be a flab lifter.
But it means something different because
Kraken's a weapon.
Dredd's word is the only thing carrying this sentence because even Odell, the guy from the academy, is like protesting. Are you kidding me, Dredd?
Yeah.
You can't. And Kraken gets back and he says he's going to fail me. And Kraken goes up and awaits his sentence. He awaits the fail. He knows.
Yeah.
He's known from probably moment one that he wasn't going to pass. And his whole evaluation, there's an internal monologue for Kraken. Show them that you're a judge.
Take it like a judge, yeah.
Yeah, and this is this.
But is that him convincing himself that he is no longer Judda? He is psyching himself up. So I think that even Kraken knows that it's still rattling around in there.
The only reason I might disagree, because I think that's a cool concept, is Kraken is trying to convince himself that he's no longer Judda, or that he's a judge. Dredd is trying to convince himself that he's a judge, and neither one of them are 100% sure. But at the beginning of this, we didn't even mention it, but Dredd confronts Kraken and he says, is Morton Judd still in your head? Or is the Judda still in you? And Kraken is like, what is that? Because
But is he playing dumb?
No, I don't believe so.
Well, I believe... Because we find out later that he's had reoccurring nightmares.
No, he doesn't have reoccurring nightmares until he gets touched by the Sister of Death.
That we see.
I'm only going with the information I have here.
I believe that his whole thing is he is trying to convince himself that the Judda is gone within him. It's that fake it till you make it thing.
I disagree because we don't see it.
I know you disagree. That's why we're doing this broadcast.
We have a window into Kraken's head. We have Kraken's internal monologue. And that's the thing. We don't see that. Like he mentions the Judda to Kraken, and Kraken says, all I know is that I was taught wrong. I was used as a weapon, and I was sent to the city to destroy it. But Kraken even says, once I got on the streets, I realized this was my purpose.
But people will say what they think other people want to hear. Kraken's trying to pass his assessment. He's going to say what he thinks Dredd wants to hear.
I would agree with that if we didn't have a window into both Kraken and Judge Dredd's internal monologue.
I'm convinced that Kraken's internal monologue is him trying to convince himself that he is not Judda anymore.
To me, it's him trying to prove to everyone else that he is a judge worthy of the position. But I will say, when we read Oz, and I even pointed this out, as they were interrogating that Judda Zalman, he was saying, show them your Judda. So, prove to them, don't break. And so if nothing else, you know, and of course,
So you're supposing that this is just the Jedi system repurposed for the judges?
well, I was going to say we're always going to change it around to fit our narrative.
Oh yeah.
But what I'm saying is actually you can put it up to this is a Fargo trait, and we definitely see it in Dredd, or you can say the Jedi stock, the people, the clones, when they believe something, it's in there, and if it was repurposed
It's
for
hard
the
to-
justice system.
It's hard to uncult a cult. It's really hard to uncult a cult.
I just simply cannot believe that. I cannot believe that Kraken was anything other than the, 100% where he needed to be because of what he does, because of his fate. And let's get there.
Yeah, so Dredd gives his assessment to the council, and he fails Kraken. Odell losing his mind. Right after giving his assessment, Dredd says, just one thing, Chief Justice. I tender my resignation. I'm taking a long walk. So I believe that they got what they wanted. They got the faulty Dredd off the streets.
I think they got the best case scenario given what was happening.
I believe, because this council's really manipulative. We saw that in Revolution. This is the same council, because Silver's the same Chief Justice in Revolution.
Yeah.
In this. They are not afraid to bend it to get what they want.
Sure.
We need Dredd. He's a figurehead. We can't have Dredd. I mean, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
So
He's
Dredd,
the mantle of Dredd is more important than the man.
yeah, like Batman when Bane breaks his back.
Yes.
What do? We put a lunatic in the cow, and he builds this really weird suit. But so the Justice Department downplays it, keeps it quiet. Dredd gets one final request, and what does Dredd do?
He frees the
Democratic
62,
Tennessee, yeah.
62 imprisoned Democratic Tennessee
Yeah,
people.
including Blondell, the leader, whose name I didn't remember an hour ago. And she is shocked that Dredd has freed them all. But the Justice Department can't do anything because it's his last order.
And to them, it is the proof that he's cracked finally, and they don't need him. And then they do his long walk ceremony early in the morning with very few people there because they don't want this to be.
It's got to be hush hush.
Yeah, they want Dredd to leave quietly because they've got to fix it.
So we end, and they obviously reveal that this California raisin looking dude in the Clint Eastwood getup is Dredd in the Cursed Earth, and he is making his way back to Mega City 1 because he knows that all hell is breaking loose.
So that brings us to the countdown to Necropolis.
Oh, here we go.
It's 5 progs, and we get to see things really start to pick up. But before that, it's time to pay some bills, Johnny.
Hail our corporate overlords.
Indeed, and I have a question for you.
What?
Do you care about your children?
Yes.
Then you might be interested in some statistics here.
Oh, here we go.
It's been statistically proven, Johnny, that Juves who are not involved in extracurricular activities are 35% more likely to be sentenced to 5 or more years in the cubes before the age of 11, Johnny.
Okay.
With that said, it's never a bad idea to get your little kitty up, active and involved in competitive sports. Would you agree or disagree?
Sure.
Well, let me tell you, our friends over at Uncle Chubby's Fat Camp are here to help.
Oh, boy.
You see, Johnny, Uncle Chubby's Fat Camp will work with your little tyke to up their caloric intake, stretch out that teeny tiny little stomach of theirs, and help them pack on the pounds in order to pack on the points in competitive eating.
What is wrong with this nightmare future?
Well, I'll tell you what's a nightmare future, Johnny. Having a loser child.
Oh, wow.
Are you interested in having your child go from thinner to winner?
Not really.
Then head on down to Sector 7 Megaplex and enroll those scrawny little Juves in Uncle Chubby's Fat Camp. And there's always an and with us, Johnny.
Of course.
If you mention the name Cursed Earth Radio,
That's us.
and that you heard their advertisement here on our show, the good people at Uncle Chubby's Fat Camp are prepared to offer you and your little tyke 15% off the child's first set of belly training wheels.
I hate everything that's happening.
Uncle Chubby's Fat Camp. Give him a call.
Oh. And we're back from corporate overlord hell.
I'm so glad we got that out of the way.
Ugh.
So, we start in on the countdown for Necropolis, and we're sort of giving Dredd, at least Dredd as we know Dredd, a break for a little while, and this story starts focusing solely on Judge Kraken and his journey into this nightmare that is his existence.
Yeah, because Joe is on the way back. I don't know how far out he went. I think he's like 1,300 Ks out from Mega City 1.
Well, and this takes place the day of his long walk.
Yeah, so he's out in the Cursed Earth. Kraken has failed, or been failed.
But he's not aware of it yet.
No.
And he sits in his tiny little cubicle, this little bare excuse for a room at the Justice Department, and he's thinking about, this is the first time in almost a year that I've had my weapons taken away and I've been locked in. And so you also get a little bit of insight into what Kraken's training must have been like. Extreme cautionary measures taken because, like you said...
Well, he's a feral animal.
And he was a weapon. He was designed as a weapon. So it was dangerous for the Justice Department to even entertain having this monster be a judge. But he's scared. He says, ominous. A lot of what goes down now is Kraken's internal dialogue and fighting his own emotions, which is interesting because we've seen Dredd fighting his emotions and
losing the battle.
Yeah, they're both losing the battle. And he keeps telling himself, you have to be calm and take what comes like a judge. And this becomes his mantra that he repeats to himself.
I still think that he's faking it till he makes it. Like he's reminding himself not to fall back on the program.
I feel like his plight now is proving that he's a judge. Proving to everyone.
To the bitter end.
Because he's been doubted by everyone coming into this, and Kraken has never had any real place to belong. He's never been accepted. Even since he was put in the academy, he's that thing.
Yeah, he is. He was a genetic monster.
And that's that. I hate to keep going back there,
but we're gonna.
But if Dredd had handled him differently, and had brought him in and given him something to get behind, it could have changed things, I think. So Odell comes up, and he's somber, and he explains to Kraken, Dredd took the long walk, and he freed a bunch of Democrats.
What a bastard.
And the interesting thing, though, is as much as Kraken has been trained, as much as Kraken has been set in this direction, he says, perhaps he was right. Maybe he saw something else in my bloodline. This is Kraken's monologue to himself. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, maybe Dredd knows something I don't. So he's entertaining the possibility, that maybe he's starting to buy into the fact that maybe he's broken. That's important. Find a person. Tell them they're broken long enough.
And they'll believe it, yeah.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
But he was only with him for 24 hours.
But we've seen with Dredd that 24 hours of evaluation is equal to these machines. That's their only father. Dredd's father turned his back on him in that scenario. But Kraken's fate is going to be much worse than we could have thought.
Yeah, Kraken, like a mad dog, cannot be just turned loose back in the city.
He's stripped of all of his regalia.
Which is going to happen if you get failed, regardless.
Right.
But the end for him is different.
Yeah, and we start to see the fear because they're basically... He turns in all of his stuff, and he heads off with Odell, and Kraken says he starts to have a sick taste in his mouth, and lead weights in the pit of his stomach, and he said, "Be calm, be calm." He's trying to
override the program.
I don't even think I don't even think which program though. The Justice
Jedi.
Department program or the Jedi?
He's tenaciously clinging to the Justice Department program because the Jedi.exe is still running in the background.
So let me ask you this. The world comes to an end. Let's say an apocalypse happens tonight. Do you think that when the struggle comes down to food, shelter, safety, your own well-being, my own well-being, would you or I, both of us, would we struggle to remain human, that cared for someone else? Or would we have to fight the urge to survive?
I think there are definitely going to be people that go blow past survival and just, relish the chaos. And
I would be, I'm telling you right now, I would be that blonde guy on the back of the Mohawk dude's motorcycle in the Road Warrior. I would just have to assimilate right in. I'm surviving.
I would like to think
I'd be the assless chap blonde guy.
I would like to think that decorum would hang on a little while in the face of that. But given the current state of our country that we're in, it would be fucking chaos.
I'm a cannibal assless chap guy day one.
Oh.
I'm dressed like Demolition, Axe, and Smash, and I'm just out there fucking just walk away.
I'm living my best life.
I'm living my best life. So this is rough, man. Kraken is on this march to wherever he's going, and he asks Odell what's going to happen to him. And Odell can't say. And I get
You're going to recycle. It can't be good.
I get the sense that Odell is really saddened by this.
This is Odell's pet project. I don't know if Odell.
I truly think just as what human.
I don't think he's a father figure so much as Dr. Frankenstein in this scenario.
I think just on a human level, this is like a living thing. It's part of the justice system. And I think
it's his Frankenstein's monster, and he's the doctor. That's exactly what it is.
I see Judd as the Frankenstein monster, but this is like he put his faith in this person.
It's his pet project. This is his puppy.
But there's something else here though that we and I don't want to talk about it until we're
getting there
because it's interesting. So remember that I need to come back to this page. Okay. So he tells Kraken, you've been deemed unsafe. We can't put you back out on the street, and we're going to have to put you down. You're going to recycle, and it's going to be death by lethal injection. And Kraken can't fucking believe it. He's shocked.
It's a bit of a jarring realization. Oh yeah, by the way, you failed. You don't get to no happy endings.
And again, the message coming to Kraken is, you're not like the other judges. You never were. You can't have the same.
You're a failed
fate.
experiment.
Yeah. You can't have the same fate. So again, you're different. You never belonged here anyways. You're going to be put down.
He was a weapon that they tried to make work for them, but now it's been failed, so it has to be dismantled. The nuclear warhead has to be rendered inert.
But imagine the rage.
Oh, yeah. The whole trip with him and Odell to recycle, Kraken is fighting every bit of his Jedi programming.
Yeah, and that's what for me.
So did you just agree that there's still Jedi programming in there?
Anything that's left in there, anything that's in his subconscious, he's fighting and he's winning. And that is my point with this whole thing, is that even if that was in there, if Dredd had acted differently, Kraken could have overcame that because he overcomes it without him. Because Kraken fully believes he's going to be killed.
Yeah, well, he is.
And he says, this can't be happening. This is insane. This is like... But again, this isn't like a monster's reaction. If someone told me I was going to be killed for the same reason, how can this be happening? This is insane. But what he does is he sees, stay calm, control, show them that you're a judge, even to the last, because I really believe it's Kraken's... I'm going to die, but to the last fucking breath, I will prove to you that you are wrong about me. Like, you have to respect that.
But is he saying that to convince himself?
Yeah, maybe in part, but if you've been told by the god of the judges, Judge Dredd, the ultimate, that you're not going to make it. If you've been told now by everyone, are you not going to go on that quest to say, fuck you, I'll prove you wrong?
Well,
I will prove you wrong.
I do identify with this part of him, but I think just, everybody wants that. You're like, no, fuck you. You're not going to tell me. I'm going to show you to the bitter end that you were wrong. So, Kraken and Odell go to this chamber of recyc, and it's a skeleton crew.
Before we get there, really quick, he has a moment where he starts laughing. He lets out, and Odell says, I don't understand what's funny, and he basically says, I'm just relishing in the irony that because I'm such a dedicated judge, because that is my programming now, that I will not fight for my own life. I'm going to die because I will not revert to what you say I am. And it's that irony, and maybe for a second he realizes that he's in a 2000 AD prog, because that's everyone's
self-aware.
And this next page is the most badass Kraken page ever. I love Judge Kraken. He's my favorite character.
I know. He is a very compelling character.
So he gets there, and it's death by lethal injection. And this page is amazing. They bring forth the Justice Department lethal injection needle, branded with all of the little SS skull deal, and the
Justice Department eagle. Of course, they can't just be basic and have random needle. No.
No, it's branded. No. It's all about branding.
Oh yeah.
And he basically decides he can't change the fact that he's going to die, but he's going to change how it happens.
Yeah, he's going to control it.
So,
he's going to go out by his own hand, not by some executioner. So he rolls up his sleeve, takes the needle from the executioner, and does the job himself.
And his last word to them is, they were wrong. I was there. I made it. I could have been damned good. And he does the deed. Yeah. And the whole time, be strong. Show them.
The whole room is stunned silence.
And the last thing that he says to himself before he injects himself with this lethal dose is, take what comes like a judge. And then we see Kraken dead.
Yeah.
Or presumably dead.
Well, let's find out, shall we? So, we're in the room in the start of the next chapter, and the judges on scene are trying to get Odell to sign off on the paperwork, and they're going to get him on the conveyor. They're going to strip him for parts, because Mega City is nothing but ruthlessly efficient. And Odell says, no, the tech boys want him. And one of the attending judges says, strange, isn't it? Fargo, Dredd, Rico, Kraken, same bloodline, same people. We had some turn out right and some turn.
And that's the interesting thing. They don't realize everything that happened. That's the irony, though, is that he's only deemed to be wrong because Dredd said that he was faulty. He never showed it. He never showed it, other than calling Dredd an old man and telling him his time was done, which Dredd was telling himself this whole story. The only reason he was deemed defective is because Dredd saw something. His metachlorian count was off.
Oh.
I'm not saying that this story goes into...
don't take us there.
...that territory, but I'm saying that Dredd's and Johnny's own logic is taking them into metachlorian territory.
So,
go ahead.
They box him up, and they're presumably going to take his corpse to the tech division so they can presumably do some testing on him to see what makes him tick and what separates him from Dredd and yada yada yada. So Odell sees the body all the way back to the Department of Justice, and he's going to take it to the tech division himself, we think. But then we find out that Kraken isn't dead.
He wakes up, and he sees Odell, and this is important, Johnny. This portion of this story is very important because Kraken wakes up fully believing he was going to die when he injected himself. He wakes up, he sees Odell, and Odell says, "I'm proud of you, son." This is huge. And this is why I've taken this sort of route of believing that Kraken's fate could have been altered, because they keep pushing this father figure element, and they're just hammering it. Like John Wagner's hammering this shit in, and as soon as he wakes up, Odell says, "I'm proud of you, son, and finally, now you're reborn. Now you're one of us."
Yeah, but here comes some shady Justice Department shit.
For sure.
So, Dredd is on the long walk. Odell has a fresh judge's uniform for Kraken, complete with a judge helmet. Not his rookie helmet. Judge helmet. No badge yet. They go to see Chief Judge Silver. And Silver says that call this a final test, a final examination. We wanted to see how you would perform knowing that you were sentenced to death. And he tells him we loaded it with harmless anesthetic, and we wanted to see how you would react. And Silver says, "You're a full judge now," and Silver passes him a badge and says, "Here's your badge, put it on." What does the badge say there, HMK?
Dredd. Here's the again, Kraken's psyche, his ego, is taking blow after blow. You're not good enough. You went through the training. You're not good enough. And then he meets Dredd. You're not good enough. And he passes, but no, you fail. And then he wakes up, and finally there's that acceptance.
Yeah.
Welcome back, son.
We accept you, but we need you to pretend to be somebody else now.
Yes, we accept you, but not as you. And this, every single time this happens for this character, it's somebody picking away at that ability that he has to hold everything in. Just like the letter that Dredd got was the final straw that broke the camel's back. It's the same thing with Kraken. He doesn't belong anywhere. He's a you're really correct. He is a Frankenstein monster.
He didn't ask to be made, but he's made, and now he has nowhere to go. But as we've talked about before on other episodes and previously this episode, Dredd is a figurehead of the department to the people. We need Dredd on the streets, or else everybody's going to go apeshit. We don't have the Dredd, but we have a Xerox.
We have the GoBots. We don't have the Transformers.
We got the GoBots. He looks like Joe, a younger version of Joe. He is, for all intents and purposes, physically Joe. Here's the badge. Go pretend to be Joe, so we don't have civil unrest.
And this is working on Kraken the entirety of the rest of this story. Is we go to a long montage, and he's out on the streets.
He's doing an admirable job, but some people notice that he looks younger than he should. Because they've all heard the legend of Joe Dredd, and they've heard it their entire lives, and he looks a lot younger than Dredd should look.
And it's eating away at him the whole time he's out there. He's busting all these criminals. He's taking out some kind of innocent people. He finds some guy who was involved in a sort of ambiguous crime by a mother-daughter duo.
Oh, he gets cited for wearing diamond-studded knee pads in this
because you should have known better.
Yeah.
You should have known better than to wear those diamond-studded knee pads down in this part of town.
He nails the guy for littering for 30 days, and then
for an
ISO cube.
And he just keeps telling himself what's in a name. But you can see it's eating away at him. He's still a fraud.
He's afforded the respect that comes with that name and the fear that comes with that name.
But he didn't earn it.
No. It's he knows it's not him. So he's doing his best to do what he can under the circumstances. Judge Silver, though, is kind of questioning why they did what they did. So even now, it's taken him to this point to, maybe this is a dumb play.
Mm-hmm. Well, because he knows eventually the citizens will find out. But he says by that time he'll have proved himself.
Yeah, and all Kraken really wants is his name on that badge.
Yeah.
He
just wants to be part of something.
He wants to go from being a cover band to being in the band.
He wants the Tommy Thayer treatment. And unfortunately,
he's got to be Ace Frehley.
Yes. He really is the Tommy Thayer of this storyline. And so Kraken's going through that. We take a little break. We're at Countdown to Necropolis 2.
It's almost here.
And so it counts down from 5 to 1. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And this just kind of veers off into a weird little tale of this woman named Xena.
Yeah, and it's this this guy writing to Dear Annie, which is like Dear Abby.
And this is Xena's husband.
And he's writing to the Mega City 1 equivalent of Dear Abby, which is Dear Annie. His wife, he's having some trouble with his wife. She has grown distant and cold from him. And look at that face.
He's not a handsome man.
He's a couple hairs away from being an ape.
He looks like Mama Fratelli.
Yeah. So, and he's batting way out of his league with her, it looks like. Turns out they had an encounter with the Dark Judges.
I'm assuming this was during the Dark Judges storyline.
Yeah.
The Death Return
Yeah.
storyline.
Dark Judges are in the block. They are judging the living shit out of everyone, pun intended.
Oh, and there's an entire panel, and it's Fear, Fire, and Mortis. Oh, no, there's Death.
Yeah.
And it's the first, Carlos Dark Judges in this story.
So good.
So good. Carlos's best Dark Judge is Mortis. He does Mortis the absolute best of...
And we get a lot of good Mortis.
Oh, man, I can't wait for that section. There's a whole miniature Judge Mortis horror movie in the middle of this Necropolis storyline.
So she goes to the door to see what all the ruckus is out in the hall. And she opens the door, and there's Judge Death and his brothers just judging. Death shoves his hand into her chest. Her husband sees this, hits Judge Death with a chair, and it momentarily stops him. He pulls his hand out of his wife's chest. At that time, judges show up and open up fire with incendiaries. The Dark Judges think better of it and peace out.
And so, ever since she was touched by Death, she's basically become the biggest Death groupie there is.
Yeah, she's, and this is the first time we've ever seen anybody escape from Judge Death after being in the thralls of being killed by Judge Death.
And the touch of these Necropolis creatures, the Sisters of Death, Mortis, once you come into contact with that, unless you're Anderson, who has those psychic, defenses up,
you're marked.
You're connected to them forever, and it starts to eat away with people.
Yeah, she's definitely like a serial killer fan now. Like she is.
Yeah.
She's watching the docs on whatever the Mega City 1 equivalent of Netflix is. She's buying the books.
She's going to make that transition from watching Snapped to being part of an episode of Snapped. And so her husband is writing to Dear Annie because ever since that encounter, she's deteriorating and she's worshiping death and she's changing their...
She's physically cold.
Yeah, her arm has been dead ever since, but one night when she sort of acted as if she was possessed in a way, her hand starts working and she threatens her husband and she's having these dreams and she can't stop thinking about death. Her lover is death. He's penetrated her and she's waiting for him to come back because she knows she serves a purpose.
She tells her husband in no uncertain terms he will no longer be penetrating her.
Right.
She is for death and death alone. And she has gone to Hot Topic and bought the Hot Topic and Spirit Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
She is decorated.
She's listening to Bauhaus and Christian Death.
She's full tilt, early 80s goth. She's got an altar to death. The apartment is physically cold due to her being there. Like her core body temperature is dropping.
And she's even trying to change herself. She stops eating. She tells herself, I have to lose more blood.
I'll never be pretty.
I've got to get rid of some of this blood. And she starts having these dreams. I love her dream sequence because it goes back to something we talked about again. She has a dream where she's getting married to death. And who's doing the ceremony?
Mortis apparently is a registered officiant.
I couldn't remember what story it was, but this is the second time he's married someone. And there's his little buddy Fire, who I guarantee you was the flower girl.
Fire. This whole week it's just been back and forth messages about Fire being HMK sent me the picture of Scott Farkas and Rover Gill from Christmas Story with Scott Farkas being Mortis and Rover Gill clearly Fire, clearly the junior auxiliary Dark Judge.
I love Judge Fire.
I know. I don't hate him. He's definitely the Ringo Starr of the four of them. Like, he's just, they're like rubbing his hair. Like, oh, you did such a good job. We'll hang that on the fridge.
Goodness.
Look what you did.
So speaking of trail behind, tag along fans of the Dark Judges, she can't figure out why they won't come, and she finally breaks and realizes what she needs to do.
They need a
sacrifice.
Uh-oh.
And luckily, she has this no good, useless, limp dick husband hanging out around the house.
Hey, look, it's Dumbo.
That was my favorite thing. I made a note about that.
That comes out of nowhere. I love it. Because that's one of the things I love about Necropolis. It's a very heavy story. Like, moralistically, philosophically. But there's still stuff like that.
She's possessed by the Dark Judges. They're talking through her. And her husband walks through the door. I guess it's got to be Death. Says, hey, look, it's Dumbo.
Are you sure it's not fire?
It might be, but it's like he's boning this guy's... He's intercorporally boning this guy's wife. And just, you're taking the guy's wife. You're going to kill the guy eventually. We know that. But he calls the man Dumbo, slams the door in his face, and knocks him out. But she's still keeping him around, I guess because he's useful.
Somebody's got to go to the grocery store.
I guess so. Somebody's got to clean up and, light the candles. But she finds out that he's been writing to Dear Annie, and that's not okay.
No.
Why is he not calling the Justice Department? Scary as they are, I would call the Justice Department if my wife were coming at me with knives on a daily basis.
You would think, well, abusive relationship.
That's true. It comes back around, doesn't it? Is this the most brilliantly woven together story, or are we just making connections?
No. I think this is all brilliantly woven together. But she's also got a hint of psychic powers due to her touch of death, because she can crush his insides with her mind now.
Oh man!
So Chip is up Shit's Creek with no paddle, and it finally happens. She kills him.
He gets sacrificed old school Satanic Panic style.
Oh yeah! Fucking Grim Reaper album cover style. But I'm gonna go extra nerd on you.
All right.
This is the end of the Horus heresy.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens when the Emperor of Man is on the verge of death and Chaos finally leaves Horus and the Emperor's going to kill him? Right before Horus dies, Chaos leaves him and he realizes, what have I done?
Oh.
And Xena does the same thing.
Okay, I didn't know where you were going with that.
Once Chip is stabbed and the gateway is open, she realizes, she is made painfully aware.
There is a
monkey's paw.
And there's a theme of people being used as tools.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Dredd had his realization. Xena too has her realization, but it's too late. She's already killed her husband.
The gate's open, but who comes across the gate?
The Sisters of Death.
This is the first time we are made aware of the Sisters of Death ever.
Yeah.
Death has two... They're really like mothers, though. They wouldn't... Because
I believe at times they're even like lovers.
Yeah, it's a really squishy, tangly mess.
It's complicated, as they would say on Facebook.
That would be the status for this. Years from when this was published, we would find out that nausea and phobia created the Dark Judges on Dead World.
So they're really the mothers of Death.
Yeah. I wonder what Dead World was before Dead World.
I want to know. In this continuity, I want to know. Yeah.
So Xena has unwittingly become the psychic gateway to let nausea and phobia in from their dimension into Mega City 1.
Oh, and it's so cool when it opens, we realize that the whole of Mega City feels
they feel it. They feel this psionic disturbance. You don't even have to be a psychic to feel. That's how powerful. As powerful as Death, Fear, Fire, and Mortis are, nausea and phobia trump them.
And they say even on this day, when the portal was opened through Xena, even hardened judges felt it.
Yeah, like
criminals stopped in the middle of their crimes. Babies woke. Babies woke and started crying. Dogs stopped with their leg mid-air and they stopped peeing.
Yeah.
Oh wait, there are no dogs in Mega City.
No. We talked
dogs.
Road dogs.
Their circuitry froze.
They felt a pervasive creep.
And here's the one transition from that, the Sisters of Death looking over the city, to almost immediately Kraken showing up where the Sisters of Death were. Is he responding then?
I don't know. I think
because it's like immediately.
I think it's at his apartment because he radios in and says that he has set his apartment on fire, and he says like when he shows up, there's something in his brain. It sounds like a jackhammer. Mm-hmm. It's trouble, and he feels it, and it won't stop. As he goes in, he sees nothing, and he says, 2 jackhammers. So now, and then phobia and nausea materialize in all their ghastly glory.
It's real
definite
creepy.
2 jackhammer job. He sees when nausea and phobia fully manifest.
They managed to make this creepy. I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of this story and all of the Dredd stories is that you get your sci-fi, all of the sci-fi you love, and it's really framed with Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
The artwork is some really different stuff than Carlos normally does.
And let's talk the color palette. Neon green, neon pink, neon blue, and it's a very unique color palette to anything else we'd ever seen at this point.
Lots of swirly, fog, misty kind of stuff.
And I kind of feel like they were telegraphing this coming. Because if you look at the Carlos work that's tied to this, prior to this...
Gradual.
Yeah, the color palette creeps in, which is awesome.
Oh,
so
I love it.
Kraken has never... And all the shit he's seen in his short life, he has never seen anything like nausea and phobia. So as... he doesn't really process what he sees. He tries to hit them with incendiary.
He has a basic knowledge of Judge Death. We find that out because he sort of says, like, I don't know exactly what this is, but this is some Judge Death shit.
Yeah.
Like, he sort of says that, and they're there specifically, whether or not he came upon them and they found him and decided they wanted him, or if they came straight to him.
I think they came hunting Dredd because they knew... Dredd and Anderson are the problems.
Oh, see, I didn't think of that. So they came looking for Dredd and found someone...
Well, they see a badge, and it says Dredd.
That would make sense, because all of the Dark Judges were banished.
Yeah.
Who
has banished them time and time and time again.
Yeah, okay. I didn't make that connection of why... Because reading this, I kept thinking... Why are they coming after him? Because he's now living in Dredd's quarters. You're right. Shit, I didn't even think of that. Good looking out there, Johnny. I didn't even think about that.
So he has set fire to his apartment, Joe's apartment.
He's trying to
Joe's
kill them.
Apartment. There's an old reference.
Our home sweet home. He's trying his best to kill these things with whatever means he has, but I think he realizes he can't really fight them.
No, so he backs out. He needs a fire control team. I'm backing out. Nausea and phobia are hitting on him because they're just creeps.
They're really weirdly sexual.
Yeah,
I know there's been some Dark Judge nausea phobia gangbangs. I just know it.
Slapping the dead meat.
I guarantee you that Fire was just the cameraman for all of those.
Should I put your thing in her thing?
Yeah.
So Kraken as Dredd tries to get to his lawmaster. Sisters cut him off. I love that phobia is making motorcycle sounds. While sitting on the Lawmaster.
They're absolutely mocking him and his...
Yeah, he doesn't really have any idea, because they have no corporeal form.
Oh, they also say, ride him, big boy.
Yeah. They are totally just creepy old ladies chicken hawking right now.
But something really important happens is that he's touched.
Yeah.
Both of them manage to get their claws on him, but at some point, they put a hand, I'm assuming, through his helmet.
Well, they're not physical, so they're in his head.
They get into his brain.
Because if you notice, they're in before the other judges show up.
Yeah.
The other judges don't see the manifestation. They're in Kraken's head.
And this is where Kraken, I don't think his meltdown has anything to do with his Judda upbringing. He has the Sisters of Death in his head.
It's a Horus Heresy thing.
He's been at this point he's been, I mean, they're just basically in there ripping everything that he was trying to hold together. that Dredd broke.
All the checks are out.
The system broke some. The Dredd broke some. Maybe his history broke some. But they're going in and they're wreaking havoc. And there's really no chance for him. At this point, he turns into a really tragic character.
No, it legit is the Horus heresy.
Yeah.
He is Horus now.
Wow.
So they're in his head. They make him go to the Justice Department. And I assume they're letting him tell the Justice Department the information they want him to tell them. Mm-hmm. He tells them about the Sisters of Death. Or maybe they're just dormant right now, and he's just carrying around as a vessel, and they're not, like, switched on.
I found something pretty sad and disturbing is that, like, they believe him, they don't believe him.
So what do they do?
They give him electroconvulsive therapy. Basically, they're wiping his brain again. So that's what I was thinking too. Was okay. So all of the stuff with Dredd tears a little piece off. All the stuff with having to lethal inject yourself. And
that's psychological damage.
And then welcome back. And then yes, welcome back, son. But no, now you're someone else. And then the Sisters of Death are in your head, and now we're going to fry his brain just a little bit more. There's no chance.
You can only wipe the hard drive so many times before you get corrupt sectors.
Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, he is getting lit up. Like, fucking plugged in, full tilt, Frankenstein device.
Yeah. It's a great panel.
Geez. So, he survives all that. He's back at the burned out husk of Joe's apartment, and he's trying to relax, and he's reading Dredd's Comportment, which is Dredd's book of law. And he's reading in chapter 9, subsection A, the lie as a tool in the judicial process.
And Dredd had made a little note in the margins that says, what about the big lie? And Kraken's reading this, getting a little bit of insight into what Dredd was going through. And he says, the big lie, what did he mean? Is there a clue in that for me? I don't know if he's talking about, is there a clue as to why he was failed? Is there a clue? I don't know what he means by that. Maybe just trying to figure out what was going on
in Dredd's head. Yeah. So he's still masquerading as Dredd. The rest of the force doesn't know, or most, I would say 99% of the judges don't know that Dredd's gone. They're keeping Kraken's contact with other judges limited. He desperately needs sleep, but they will not schedule him for sleep machine time because it puts him around other judges. And you know what happens with sleep deprivation.
You start to go a little bit crazy.
I think it's after 7 days you start doing irrevocable psychological damage.
Things become really surreal after a couple days.
Yeah.
I know you and I have both
after 48 hours it gets real loopy.
Yeah. We've both experienced those multi-day long drives, no sleep.
Oh, yeah. You get punch drunk. Everything's funny.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to make himself sleep. So he's been taking pills to stay awake and to stay... So he's medicating both ends now.
And I think he's also been having dreams of the Sisters of Death. So we see him taking pills and basically saying, maybe I can keep those dreams away, but they're unstoppable.
No, they're too powerful.
Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the Sisters of Death, and he starts to see everything.
Yeah,
everything that that's in his subconscious starts to be rattled loose.
But the sisters realize through probing him that he's not Dredd. They say one man, two souls. So they realize it's the same genetic material, but the inside is different. It's a variant.
So, here's a question.
All right.
If the sisters can see the soul, if they can see that thing, and they're recognizing that, what does that say for our argument? I don't know where that leaves. That's a question I don't have the answer to.
Because we have gone through nature, nurture, and genetics.
Yeah.
But yeah, would a clone have a soul? That's another argument we'd have to have.
According to the sisters, yes.
But maybe that's their view of what that is.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
they're applying their own frame of reference to what makes Kraken and Joe.
Yeah.
So they're they're looking at it, and or maybe it's just his fractal personality, because it says one resists and the other. So maybe Kraken has now had a psychological break.
Yeah.
Where there is one Judge Kraken, and there's one Judda Kraken in there.
It's possible.
So they're fumbling around with this, and then they realize, oh, Xena's still here, and she's psychic, but she's getting burnt out quick. All of her life force is being used to keep the sisters in this realm, and she's getting fried, and somehow we end up in the side division where this Judge Kit becomes conduit. I don't know if she's just like a radio picking up, like when your fillings pick up radio waves.
I think because even Anderson, who shows up in this a little bit later, is getting Dark Judge stuff and Sisters of Death stuff, but she seems to be almost, she's that lightning rod.
Yeah, she's uniquely in tune with it.
I think they're reaching out, and she scrawls, and she's in a trance. And it's like that stuff you see in Paranormal Investigations, where one person is just drawing.
Or Halloween 5.
Or Halloween 5, or the Insidious films.
Yeah.
So she scrawls on the wall, Necropolis.
In black.
Which means City of the Dead. Yeah.
Yeah, we said it at the same time, too. High five.
That's fucking awesome.
I can't pronounce her last name. I'm going to screw it up. Aggie? Kit.
I was saying Aggie.
We're going to say Kit.
What's the weirdest pronunciation that you can find? Because that's what it probably is.
Barreled.
Okay. Barreled. Kit barreled.
So Kit, she is just, I'm assuming, drained from this touch with, because even Anderson is pretty much drained dealing with the Dark Judges.
Yeah.
I can't imagine taking a blow from the sisters, as they are much more powerful psychic entities.
You get a couple pages from that, one of my favorite panels.
Yeah.
I have it tattooed on me. I love this panel, and it's Kraken's head when the dam is finally erupted, and you see these shadowy. I love this panel so much.
The shadowy Judda.
Oh, the shadow. Yeah, with all their crazy, insane. To quote my co-host, wackadoo ass helmets.
I wonder if the Judda rank is determined like Catholics by the size of your hat.
Oh, that's possible. If that's the case, then based on the one photo of Judda Kraken that we see, his rank was very low because he had little tiny horns.
Maybe he was junior. Maybe he was the Judge Fire.
I like to think
of the Judda.
I like to think it's based on color. Who is the most Easter colored? But this panel is the shadowy Judda, and they've got their knives out, and Kraken is screaming, I'm not Kraken, and they're beckoning him, Kraken,
He's desperately trying to outrun his past. I do think we have a psychological break within Kraken, and he is two distinct people inside that shell.
Do you think that Kraken was his Judda name, or was that a judge name that they just gave him? Because think about it. The Judda are calling him by Kraken.
I guess I'm going to say that's his Kraken name, and they just... so why the judges would stick to that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Morton Judd, in this dream, gives Kraken a knife and tells him to avenge him. He wants revenge, the death of Mega City 1. And in the dream, Kraken cries out, death to the Mega City. Then he wakes up. And he's freaked out because apparently this is a reoccurring dream, but it's always ended with him not taking the blade. But now he's taken the blade.
And he's fighting in that same dream with Morton Judd. And Morton, he tells Morton it was all lies, Judd. And his subconscious, having that battle, basically goes back to that Christ, that God figure, and says, who are you to know the truth?
Programming's hard to break.
Yeah.
Like Scientology.
And then you also have the fucking Sisters of Death putting their 2 cents in there, too.
So if he has, from your profession, if he has had a psychological break, and he is now of 2 distinct personalities, do those personalities realize there's another personality in the car with them? Or are they compartmentalized?
That one is like something that has moved. It's almost evolved a lot in the field of psychology, because we used to look at multiple personalities, and that was really rare. I mean, really rare. Now we look at it as if somebody is dissociating. So they create this other protected sort of side of their personality that it deals with certain things because the other part of the same personality can't. So it's actually fractured elements of the same person.
Okay.
They're not aware of one another, and it's always a red flag. If I ever meet somebody, and it's very, very, very super rare, like very rare, that comes up to me and tells me I have multiple personalities and this is their name and this is that one's name, that's a red flag for somebody who's malingering. So generally, having multiple personalities is really like you have exactly what they're talking about. One man, two souls. They're fractured.
They don't know the other exists.
Yeah, and that sort of shows itself because Kraken ends up doing a lot of things that he doesn't remember.
Yeah, the Judge Kraken personality gets put in the back seat while Judda Kraken or new Dark Judge Kraken is at the wheel. So, God, this is really like you show me another comic book.
Yeah,
that like there's a podcast where it's getting this deep in. Okay, so Kraken realizes that the dream has changed and it worries him. He is strung out, and Judge Kraken is still there driving right now, and he desperately wants that part of Kraken wants to be the judge, and he wants that to be the only part of him.
Yeah.
So now we're talking to Xena's neighbor now. And he is calling the Justice Department because it is fucking cold.
He's living next to a meat locker, essentially, just to keep Xena's barely living corpse alive. And I'm sure having the Sisters of Death kind of crashing on her couch is not helping because we all know when there's a ghost in the room, it's cold as fuck.
Oh, I've seen that on the TV.
Yeah.
So like
Ghost Adventures told us that.
The joining wall is iced over. Like, it's so cold. So he's called the Justice Department, and they tell him to stop wasting their time. If you call back, you're going to the cubes.
Yeah.
Because apparently he's called once or twice, and they're tired of dealing with it. Cut to Kit is meeting Judge Kraken Dredd.
Yeah.
And
New Dredd. I love that term.
They're going to go meet someone or do something involving the sisters. Kit thinks she's on duty.
She thinks she's on a little covert mission.
She also notices that Dredd looks a lot younger than he should.
Yeah.
She can't really get a read on him, but I think, knows something doesn't feel right.
Yeah. I think against her own better judgment, she goes with him. And as soon as she starts to question, he chokes her out.
Yeah.
And he delivers her.
Well, they go to this block, and she keeps trying to figure out where they're going, why they're going there, and her intuition's kicking in. Something's not right about this. And she realizes, the sisters are here, and he straight out says, yeah, I'm taking you to them. Mm-hmm. And she realizes that Dredd isn't Dredd. Like, it finally clicks.
But it's too late.
Yeah, he chokes her out in the elevator and takes her to the sisters. Meanwhile, the guy that called the Justice Department sticks his head out to see what the commotion is, and there's Judge Dredd carrying a female judge into this ice block of an apartment.
And because Anderson, and I'm assuming most of the Psi division have a link, once Kraken delivers Kit to the Sisters of Death, now they have their new conduit, she starts psychically screaming out for help. And Anderson knows something's wrong. Anderson also finds a note from her saying that she was summoned to meet His Majesty, which apparently was what she called Dredd behind the scenes, which is funny. And so I think right away Anderson doesn't give a shit that it's Judge Dredd. Starts immediately saying something's wrong. We need to figure out where Dredd is. We need to figure out where Kit is. She's worried
I think she's acutely aware of the paranormal event that's happening.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the guy in the apartment next door calls the Justice Department one more time because now he has seen Judge Dredd take an unconscious woman into this meat locker. And as he's on the phone, a shadow appears behind him in his apartment and turns around to see it's a judge. And it's New Dredd. And what does New Dredd do to our poor friend?
He murders him.
3 shots.
It's the old Judge Dredd Stallone movie treatment.
Uh-huh.
Where the fake Dredd comes in and blasts the guy.
But it's not for cameras now. He's just killing them for the sisters.
Yeah. And the sisters now have their brand new psychic battery.
A much more powerful psychic battery. So
it keeps going and going and going
for most of the rest of this. So the side judges are trying to find Kit. Kit is screaming out to Anderson. And Kit's trying to fight the sisters. Kit's a strong psychic. But it's the Sisters of Death. And they inhabit her. Anderson feels them inhabit Kit. And she feels Kit scream out and then go cold. Because now Kit is the gateway. And with a more powerful psychic gateway, we can unleash all kinds of hell.
And at the same time, Judge Dredd, New Dredd, Kraken is up to no good. And he's starting to try and figure out how we can bring back the Dark Judges at Tech Division.
Because they've been banished to a parallel limbo.
And they're like, well, yeah, but why would you want to do that? And he's like, listen, I'm dealing with some stuff. Don't worry about it.
He gives my favorite response, because reasons.
Yeah, because reasons. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
So while Kraken New Dredd is trying to track down the 4 Dark Judges, Nausea and Phobia have their new battery, but poor Xena is spent.
I don't feel too bad for her because she gets what she always wanted.
Yeah, she wanted to be married to Death.
She gets the VIP package.
But it's not actually Death. It's Nausea.
Well,
Death.
She gets a little something.
Yeah, she gets dead. She's gone. So, Kraken New Dredd is trying to track down the 4 Dark Judges because reasons. And Side Division is trying to find Kit.
Anderson continues to insist that something's wrong. She's not buying anything, but they're nervous to start throwing accusations towards Dredd because, I mean, he is the guy that saved us from this menace in the past.
And they don't know that it's not Dredd.
Right.
Yeah, they have to be close to him to, read him to know that it's not Dredd. So none of them have been close to Dredd since all this started.
And we're just about to the point where the time of Necropolis is at hand.
Yeah, so Kraken Dredd is still out on the streets while Judge Kraken is in control of the vessel, operating as Judge Dredd.
And he has a realization of his own because now he's aware that they're trying to figure out what happened. He's not sure, but he pulls out the side judge badge that he had stashed away. And I genuinely think he was unaware.
Yeah, it's psychic break.
This version of him had no idea.
Judge Kraken was driving.
And so he decides immediately that he's got to get himself to the Justice Department. Yeah. Even at this point, that part of him is trying to do something. He knows he's broken. I don't think he's had much hope for himself for a long time. I think he knows that there's no coming back from where he's at.
I like the little touch Carlos put in here because for our listeners that don't know, the side division judges don't have their names on their badges. Yeah. It just says Psy on the front. And he had Kit's name on the back side of the badge. So I guess that's where you would put it.
Right.
It's not in the front. So he realizes that, I've done something horrible. I've got her badge. Why would I have her badge?
And he struggles. I love it. He struggles because that survival instinct is there. And he's fighting himself. And he says, act like a judge, damn it, for once.
Yeah.
act like a judge, and he gets on his Lawmaster and he heads to the
turns
Justice
himself
Department.
in, and Anderson punches him right in the fucking face.
Yeah, we go from him driving there to absolute chaos, and she's pissed.
Side division's lit. Anderson punches Dredd in the face.
Somebody has a sweet bowl cut in the foreground. What are you doing? And he's being as honest as he can, basically saying, I don't know. I can't recall what I did. And Anderson's pushing, and she's saying, we're fucking going to find out what you did, and I'm going to get in there.
She realizes, though, she's in close proximity to Dredd. She can read him now, and she realizes this isn't Dredd. And then the cat's out of the bag. The Justice Department has to say that, yeah, this isn't Dredd. Even Silver comes in and says, yeah, I did a thing. Maybe not the best thing I've done. My track record for great decisions kind of skewed in the bad on this. So now now that's out in the open. Side Division gets a fix on Kit. And they're going to throw everything at this. We've got riot tanks. We've got H-Wagons. We've got riot troops.
All pretty much useless in dealing with the Dark Judges,
Yeah.
but do what you can.
Yeah, we're gonna make a big show of it. Anderson's trying to read Kraken to find out what happened. And she finds out. It almost reminds me of when Judge Death ends up in the Joker's head.
Yeah.
It's just absolute chaos.
Yeah, she says, "Oh, you're one crazy mixed up kid."
Ugh, waka waka.
She feels
She's rewinding the tape, basically,
Yeah.
but the tracking's all fucky.
Yeah.
For you kids that don't know that. And so the sisters have enough power now through Kit to really manifest themselves for the first time in front of the entirety of Mega City 1.
And so they come out like Godzilla and King Kong.
Yeah, so the Justice Department is rolling hard and heavy towards where they think Kit is. And mid-March, the sisters manifest like these two giant kaiju monsters.
And now we're going to have the Armory of Mega City 1 versus something they really have no chance of fighting. And they're using, you see them using like Judge Fear's abilities to an extent because they're making people hallucinate.
Yeah.
That now Mega City 1's defenses, their Justice Department, they're all fighting each other. You see people killing their own comrades because they think they're looking at them and all they see are skulls.
Yeah, and Anderson's trying to get through to people that this isn't real. You've got to believe me. This isn't real. Don't believe what you're seeing. She can't get anybody to hear. She says they're all blinded by fear. And meanwhile, Kraken's next to Anderson, and the sisters reach out into him and fully shut Judge Kraken down. So Dark Judge Kraken is now driving the car. And Anderson, she's still reaching out to Kit amidst all of this chaos. And, I mean, it's full scale. They deploy the robo-judges.
Yeah. And that's a threat of its own right there.
Yeah. Well, because the human judges are now, unless they're Side Division, they are real susceptible to this. Like, this whole panel with the heavy tank, the commander...
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
Turns around and sees his whole crew as skeletal zombies, and he kills every single one of his crew. And then, much like the Dark Judges like to do, before he dies, they let him realize, oh, guess what you did? So he dies with guilt and fear.
He could have had a nice, I did my job. At least I did my job. But no, we're not getting there. And Kraken's going through his own internal struggle.
Anderson's still on her feet.
Yeah, for the time being.
But I thought this is one of the reasons I really like Anderson. The sisters try to reach into Anderson and take control of her, and she can shut them down. So she's
had death in her head.
Yeah.
They're nothing compared
Well,
to
I mean, they outrank death, I would imagine, on a power scale.
I to an extent.
They made death.
Yeah, but sometimes the protege is greater than the master.
Oh, he's Darth Vader in me there? Or
I guess. I don't even fucking like Star Wars. Why do we have so many references?
So Anderson forces them out of her head. And Anderson is still calling out to Kit. Kit finally gets to Anderson where she's at. Dunk Ronaldo block. And as Anderson turns to tell who she thinks is Judge Kraken, where Kit is, she doesn't realize that the switch has been flipped. Judge Kraken is on fucking vacation. It's Dark Judge Kraken now, and he knocks her out.
And he's being commanded in his head now by Judd
and the sisters
to kill Anderson. He's still fighting against it. I don't have to kill her. At this point, why fight anything? You've damned everyone.
Yeah. The gates open, the horse is out of the barn. Amid trying to strangle Anderson, a heavy tank shell detonates behind them and throwing them both into God knows where.
And we can fast forward a little bit through. There's just more struggle. There's more psychic struggle. There's more struggle versus the forces of Mega City. And what it leads us to is Kraken pushing his agenda of, I need you to open the portal or whatever. I need you to find the Dark Judges.
Yeah. And
luckily it doesn't take too long.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly they find 4 paranormal forms in an endless limbo.
I think we're going back to the 2000 AD we know and love, where it's like, all right, let's wrap it up.
Yep, and here they are.
And boom, favorite page. One of my favorite pages is the Carlos Esquera, 4 Dark Judges all together. The only thing I always thought was comical was you have a Kraken in the foreground, and it looks like he's doing like a got
did it.
But that's they show up. Fear, fire, mortis, and death. Greetings, we have come to judge you. And the next prog, it tells us, is Judgment Day.
Yeah, we are now in the grips of Necropolis.
The city's black. It's freezing temperatures.
It's like 10 degrees below freezing.
It's like Canada.
Yeah.
It's just darkness and despair all over. And now we've forgotten that there is a real Judge Dredd out there.
Yeah. Dead man.
He looks like a California raisin Clint Eastwood.
He does. And what we don't know until we read Tale of Dead Man is after Dredd took the long walk, the sisters tried to off Dredd. The Dark Judges tried to off Dredd. He survived, but he ended up face down in a river of acid.
It happens.
Yeah, well, you know. And there's a whole story of him regaining... He is an amnesiac. When he comes to, he's in this little town on the cursed earth, and they call him a dead man because he looks like he's fucking dead. And he goes out to figure out where he is and retrace his steps, and this little kid comes along with him, and bit by bit he finds parts of his uniform, his shattered gear, and he ends up in this little town where the Sisters of Death try to take him out one more time. And that's when he remembers who he is. He remembers he's Judge Dredd, and he's not scared of the sisters. As we've seen, he put his fist through Fear's face the first time they met. This little child he's with, deathly afraid of the sisters. I don't know if you've read Tale of Dead Man. The kid's eyes fucking melt out of his head. And Dredd's able to beat the sisters back, and they retreat to Mega City. He realizes shit's going south in Mega City, takes this now blind child back to his family, who curse his name because their child's eyes are melted. So that's where we pick up the Dead Man. He is commandeered this cursed earth mutant's buggy, and they are trying to haul ass back to Mega City 1.
And we get a tiny bit of humor, and it's warranted because, man, it's been heavy.
It has been dark and grim.
The only bits of humor that you can find up until this point are just, you've got your Clegg furries, and then a few things that you can just find funny that were not intended. But we're getting into zany territory because they meet this fucking hag woman who we don't realize who she is. No, who would realize who she is in the state that she's in? But
she throws a snake at them.
And
while they're in their car.
She's also fractured and compartmentalized herself with some dissociative issues. She's talking to herself.
Yeah.
She's having dialogue, but she doesn't recognize Dredd, and Dredd doesn't recognize her right off, but we find out that this is Judge Magruder, Chief Justice Magruder, who took the long walk.
Yeah, and Joe still has his badge that is acid eaten, but it still says Dredd. And that kind of jars her back into one cohesive personality. And so they go back and forth, and Joe tells Magruder what's going on in Mega City 1. So Magruder said, yeah, what the hell do I have to lose?
Turns into a buddy cop movie.
Yep.
Let's go fucking save the city.
So,
the two ugliest people in the cursed earth.
Magruder slightly more attractive than Joe.
Magruder looks like a man.
Yeah.
She looks like an
She's
old,
got a beard.
haggard man.
Yep.
Yeah.
So on the way back to Mega City 1, they meet caravans of survivors that escaped before we find out the sisters dropped a wall around the wall, a psychic wall that no one's getting out. So these refugees have made it out. They are refugees escaping into the cursed earth. That's how fucked Mega City 1 is now.
Well, and even the judges now in Mega City 1 are starting to bend to the will. They're either running or they're assimilating.
Yeah, and as we talked about the post-apocalypse, they took your tract and they assimilated.
They got on the back of that motorcycle,
yes, they
put
did.
on those assless chaps, and they said, where are we fucking going?
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yes.
So Magruder and Dredd run into a judge at one of these refugee camps, and he is a big bag of dicks. This judge.
Oh yeah, he's still playing judge, but he's playing judge so that he can get his own needs met. He's taking food from people. He's just being a total dick.
Judge Lucien, the big bag of dicks.
Yeah.
So Dredd, as and still in dead man garb, tells him to knock it the fuck off. Lucien gets a little Clint Eastwood on him. And Dredd just shuts him the fuck down, shoots him in the hand, knocks his lawgiver out, and tells him to strip.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, what? And Joe's like, you heard me.
Banishes him to the cursed earth. Get the fuck out of here.
Tosses his badge into the fire. And the guy goes, he realizes who the fuck it is. He hears the voice, and Dredd shows him the remains of his badge and tells him to get lost. If I better not see you again. You're not a judge. If you were a judge, you would have stayed and fought.
Yeah. Which is interesting because maybe now Dredd has found a new purpose in being a judge.
I don't think it's like Dredd is in love with the law again, but he still loves Mega City 1.
Right. Well, and it's like I think he's starting to see the parts of himself, the parts of who he is as a judge that have value and warrant him continuing to be a judge.
Yeah.
It's not because he is one of those judges that abuses his power, but
he honestly loves Mega City 1.
He that's his thing.
Yeah.
If as much as he probably doesn't really know what love is, it's his thing to protect.
He still wants to protect the innocent. I think deep down in the core, he knows that there's a lot of innocent people that have no way of defending themselves against what's going on.
And it's a weird fine line with the character because, as we were reading the previous progs, at some points he feels almost contempt and absolutely nothing for the citizens, like of the Undercity. So it's always hard to know, but in this story especially, there's a big character arc.
Yeah.
Major. And
I like how when Dredd gets Lucien to strip down, tells him we'll keep his lawmaster, and tells him take a hike, and Joe says, "Not my problem. Don't ever let me see you again." And Magruder goes back into full tilt Chief Justice mode, and don't think it's a long walk either. You're off the roster.
Yeah,
that's official. So now Joe has a uniform, and he puts it all on, pins his badge on, puts his helmet on. Magruder starts laughing, and Dredd's like, "What's so funny?" And he said, "Look at yourself, Joe. You look like Judge Death." He looks like a Ninja Turtle.
Or Ben Grimm,
yeah,
the ever-loving blue-eyed thing in a Judge Dredd helmet. Yeah, he looks pretty bad.
So we have a fighting chance. Dredd is out there. Magruder, as unhinged as she is on the back of the Lawmaster with Joe, and they're like the walls of Mega City 1 are decimated.
Yeah.
And they're the great splash page of Joe and Magruder looking at the ruins of Mega City 1, and she goes, "Us against that?"
Yeah.
Of course, Joe's, yeah.
And it's not only that, but it's the two of them versus the 4 dark judges, and now the 5th Dark Judge because Kraken is fully assimilated.
Yeah, he's
Kraken
in the saddle.
is his own Dark Judge at this point.
And they now know that through talking to Lucian that they're against the Justice Department has assimilated.
Yeah.
And so...
But he's faced that before.
Yeah.
Day of the Law died. So Dredd...
The Day the Law
can handle it.
died had the Clegg,
Yeah.
but now it's the Dark fucking Judges.
Yeah.
This is grim. This
And Judge Fish is nowhere to be found. He's not
may
gonna
he
help
bloop
us.
in peace.
So after this, one of my favorite parts of this entire saga happens, which is this. I like to call this the Judge Mortis standalone horror movie.
Yeah, this gets good.
It's just a small group of cadets and a couple other mega city children, led by what we're assuming is Judge Giant's son.
Has to be Giant's son.
Brand new, still in his not in his rookie judge uniform, in his cadet
Yeah,
uniform.
these aren't like partial Eagles. This is cadet judge. It's
And they're just trying to survive
Yeah.
in the wastes. And
they're trying to find a way out.
yeah, and we just get like them sneaking around. They sneak into the Undercity for a time. They're fighting actual judges that have turned, and there's this really, really cool part where they're trying to get through. They're trying to be quiet.
They've got a little guide.
Oh, they've promised. It's sad. They've promised him food.
Yeah, it's
all
so-
he wants is food.
It's so cold in Mega City 1. His feet are black with frostbite. They're
Yeah.
going gangrenous. They're just trying to get to the Undercity. And this kid says he knows how to get there if you just give me food. So, all right, they're giving him their rations. Judge Giant's son blows the head. Like, just full tilt takes out a judge.
Total badass. We
Yeah.
love Judge Giant
Oh.
and all of his stock,
his great
family
progeny.
members. The best part of this story, though, is this all just to set up so that Judge Mortis can beam down from a fucking spaceship. And there's this great image. And because what's happening is some people are turning themselves in to go ahead and be judged. But
And what does being judged mean?
you're just being exterminated.
Some people are punching their own tickets.
Yeah. Some people are trying, and so you really only have 5 dark judges who are going about this. It's going to take them a while.
Yeah,
They're going to go individually.
And it's a very hands-on experience.
Oh, and these kids get chased by Mortis. Look at this page. It's the final page of whatever prog this is.
Part 15.
Part 15. And it's maybe the best Judge Mortis image ever. And he beams down, and he's going to now chase these kids.
He's murdering children.
Oh, he's after them.
They're trying to get to the Undercity. They are now being doggedly pursued by Mortis. Judge Giant's son don't give a shit.
They manage to blow Mortis up, but he reassembles because he's just bones.
High X.
And the best part of this story for me comes when they think that they have evaded Mortis. They go into the Undercity.
They shut the door behind him.
It's full of bodies. It's full of
Yeah,
rot.
it's just like it's an abattoir. It's just an asshole to elbow corpses.
And their little guide demands, I want my food. You promised me food. You just feel so sorry for this kid. But he's so just in that survival instinct mode of I need food to eat. That
He doesn't know about Mortis.
He doesn't understand.
The cadets, I'm sure, have learned about Mortis
Yeah.
in the academy. He's just wanting food. They're trying to find the door underneath all these fucking bodies. Mortis decays the door they have shut.
And he shambles towards this kid who's trying to shove this peanut butter substitute sandwich down his throat. He grabs the kid's head.
It just melts him.
Oh,
Come,
and it's
child, come to judgment. And
It's grim.
it's no one. Everyone's being judged, and Giant's son he's the last one down the hatch. He gets to see this horror show. Seeing somebody get their head blown off is one thing. Watching a child dissolve at the fetid touch of Mortis, completely another thing. Psychologically, I'm sure that's going to be damage for years.
But for you and me,
it's
I'm
amazing.
so glad that we have this panel.
Oh, Carlos drew the hell out of this.
Oh man, he's great with Mortis.
And parting shot, Giant. I presume this is Giant. lobs a grenade back at the shaft they just came down as Mortis tries to come at them, and Mortis is just blown to bits.
But not dead.
No,
We will
he's
see him
never
later.
dead.
Yeah.
So now the cadets are trapped in the Undercity with no way back. Why? I don't know why you want to go back. They're down now in the Big Stinky.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking to see if we can see any fucking roofs made of concrete.
We're still back on that, huh?
I'm still on that.
Oh, Jesus. So now we got Magruder and Dredd coming in through the Big Stinky in a bathtub boat built for two. So there's a little back and forth, old buddy war stories with them. It's like a buddy cop movie with them in a bathtub.
It's fun.
But Joe's starting to hear voices now.
Luckily, it's not the Sisters of Death. It's Judge Anderson reaching out because, she figured out what was happening. She knows that the Dredd that she was interacting with was a fake Dredd, and she's probably just knows that if anybody's going to save the city, it's Dredd.
And we don't know exactly Anderson's whereabouts at this point. We just know that she's somewhere because she's sending Joe imagery of these little monsters.
Oh, yeah. These are like the Ewoks.
It's like a Jim Henson nightmare.
It is, yeah. And our cadets are also running around down there in the Undercity, too. And so they managed to be more heroic at this point than any of the Mega City judges.
Yeah, full Eagle judges. And we found out these things that we saw are called Troggies. They're Undercity dwellers, mutants.
They're the Ewoks of this episode.
Oh, yeah. And then we find out that one of the cadets has psychic abilities because Anderson can reach out to her. She's super receptive. And Anderson tells this cadet, Eckerson, that she gives her coordinates, basically. And the rest of the cadets think Eckerson is just flipped. And Eckerson convinces them, no, follow me, just follow me. So she leads them right to Anderson, who is in the middle of these Troggies, who I assume, are they cannibalistic? Are they going to eat her?
I always assume little weird creatures like that are cannibalistic. We already know that those people down there are hungry.
Yeah, if horror movies have taught us anything.
Yeah. So I even assumed that I don't know why we keep going back to fucking Star Wars, but
What is it with you tonight?
we do know that the fucking Ewoks are cannibals. We just glazed past that. They were gonna fucking cook and eat everybody. Remember they had them on the poles?
Yeah. You make a good point. I would
So-
have liked them better if we went full tilt cannibal.
Yeah, me too. But they find Anderson. They find her coordinates, and I thought this was cool. There's just one page or one little image. Anderson is sleeping, and she looks peaceful on the outside, but you see that there is another Sister of Death. Deliria, who is...
Now, I wondered, is Deliria really there, or is she a construct of Anderson's mind?
I don't know. That's a good question. I just
Because
assumed...
we don't see Deliria anymore past this panel.
I'm just assuming that she only comes out when she's needed.
I
She's the Judge Fire of the three, Sisters of Death.
We also find out that
If it's Wilson Phillips, she's the fat one. I don't know. I'm sorry.
So we find out that Anderson has some shrapnel lodged in her back from that shell going off behind her and Kraken. She's possibly paralyzed. The cadets are pretty resourceful. They have heeded their training well. They form a perimeter around Anderson. They sterilize the environment. They get the shrapnel out of Anderson. Anderson starts kind of coming around, but now she's in the grips of fever. Where Deliria, and that's why I don't think Deliria is like an actual being, because I think it's brought on by Anderson's fever and possibly her mind constructing a third.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. So also here, playing into that redemption element of the story for Dredd, if we're going to call it that anyways, being the youth of the Justice Department of Mega City show to be so heroic and selfless, and they, it's like that child instinct of that person is hurt, I'm going to help that person.
Yeah.
Maybe this is also something that brings Dredd back to a better place in seeing that at least these young cadets still have that part of them that could care for Judge Morph, or that could be a Judge Minty. So maybe, I don't know. It's not really spelled out like that here, but that's what I was thinking as I was reading it.
No, I totally get that. That's a very good point. But then we see this creature coming out of the shadows towards Anderson's body and the cadets are terrified.
It's a dark judge.
Yeah, well, it looks like death.
Yeah.
But Joe is Joe. And Anderson realizes, she comes around, and Anderson realizes it is Joe. It's Joe. It's really Dredd. And Anderson takes her time and kind of fills Joe in on what's going on. So I'm assuming psychically, because I doubt she has much energy at this point.
Yeah. Tell me everything you know about the sisters.
Mm-hmm. And so now we have acid-faced Dredd, crazy old man Magruder, and a handful of cadets against Necropolis.
And Anderson as much as she can be involved, if she can be involved.
Yeah, psychically she's still formidable, but physically she's a doorstop right now. So the cadets, Magruder and Dredd, they finally scale up from the Undercity up into Mega City 1. And they see the horror show, the cold, the bodies.
And Dredd has some very grim business coming up. Once they start into this mission that they're about to go on, he has to put down all the rabid dogs of Mega City. He's going to get Kraken. He's going to get the Dark Judges. He has to take out the judges that have now gone bad and have turned on Mega City. And probably the saddest version, or the saddest example of that, is that his mission is to take out Kit.
Yeah, but I don't think he feels torn about it. It's duty. It's grim duty. It's not his first rodeo. He knows what he needs to do. But do you think all the street judges, are under psychic control of the Dark Judges, or do you think there was like a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing where they just said?
I picked up on the Stockholm syndrome a little bit, so I would probably go with that, because later on when, inevitably, spoiler alert, when they retake Mega City, there's a panel, and I'll never be able to pinpoint it, so I'm just going to mention it now, where one of the judges basically radios Dredd, and he mistakenly says something to the effect of, like, the intruders. I mean, and you know what I mean? So it's like, I think some judges were doing what they had to do to survive. And maybe that's a little bit of a comment on how, the judges have essentially been... It's the jarhead idea. They've been brainwashed into following orders. And when the regime changes,
they're going to continue
and that's what sets someone like Dredd apart and makes him a character that we are able to enjoy and still see as somewhat of a protagonist. I don't want to say hero, but because when the system is fucked to a greater degree than it's normally fucked, Dredd will go against the system.
Yeah,
and so, someone like Magruder, that's kind of her thing too. And then you have these younger judges like Young Giant and all these cadets and rookies who have not been brainwashed to the degree yet. So they're able to also say, no, we're going to fight back.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going into now. This is basically where the final showdown really takes place, and they're taking this. There's all this mirroring of what we saw from Judge Kraken when he was doing his assessment, and I think it has to be intentional. Where now we're starting to see Dredd almost using the same tactics, because way back when Kraken went in to deal with that hostage situation, he put on the cuffs and let himself in. Mm-hmm. And what is Dredd doing now? He's going to handcuff his compatriots. He's got Magruder and these rookie and cadet judges, and he's going to go in. using his horribly messed up face.
It's a real easy sell for Joe right now because he looks like a California raisin from hell.
Yeah.
And he's got another judge's badge. So
Judge Tuna.
Yeah. So they're not going to ever think that it's Joe.
Do you think this was intentional? That because as it goes on, I just keep seeing parallels between Dredd and Kraken and their tactics. And there's a thing at the end that I want to point out to you, too, that really hits that home. But here we go, Dredd using the same old trick in a different way.
Maybe it's the Fargo line.
It might be the Fargo. It's possible.
It's just something that comes hardwired from the factory.
Yeah. So you see his resourcefulness, and they're trying to get themselves into an H-Wagon. Is it an H-Wagon?
Yeah.
What is it? It's a gigantic craft of some sort. And Anderson had told them, had told Dredd that he needed to target Dunk Ronaldo block.
Yeah, she finally was able to locate Kit through all... And she's been shielding Dredd and Magruder and their recruits this whole time from the sisters. So she's, already physically damaged, but she is expending every last ounce of energy she has, shielding Dredd and Magruder and the cadets from the probing eyes of the Dark Judges and the sisters, while also simultaneously trying to find Kit. She must be just exhausted.
Yeah, she's got programs running in the background.
Yeah.
This is such a cool thing that I always see pop up in all of these stories. I love it so much. It's always that down to a few men, last-ditch effort, right at the very end, and Dredd usually blows something up with a nuclear weapon of some sort. In this one, he doesn't blow anything up with a nuclear bomb, but he blows
out of
something. So when Dredd comes in, they even ask him, they're like, "Whoa, what the fuck happened to you?"
Oh, yeah, little disagreement with the sisters.
Yeah. Which apparently they're just... disfiguring people.
They can't tell Magruder looks like a Magruder because she looks like a crazy old man.
Like, who's the old guy?
Yeah, Dredd looks like a California raisin, and they don't know the cadets from anything. So their guard's already down. They're really overconfident. And do you think these guys are Stockholm, or do you think they're under psychic control?
I'm gonna say say Stockholm.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Stockholm.
The regime has changed, and they're going along with it. That's what they've been sort of trained to do. You know?
Well,
and
lucky for them, they're about to be discharged.
Well, think about this too, though. We talked about in the beginning of this episode the Judda and how. See again, that's what I'm saying. So we talked about the Judda and how they are sort of brainwashed to follow this specific decree and follow and have these ideals. And our big discussion was, can you take that energy and deflect it and push it in the way of justice? If these guys are any indication, if they're not under psychic control, maybe it's a judge thing. When you've been trained in that specific manner, once the regime changes,
you just the gears keep turning.
Yeah. This is like a really grim thing to bring up on this
this
podcast.
Well, it's a good story to bring it up in.
Well, have you ever seen Sallow, 120 Days in Sodom?
No, I haven't, but I do know what you're talking about.
So there's a scene in that film. The whole process of that film is the captives gradually being integrated into certain members of the captives being integrated and becoming the captors. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the film, the people who were initially the captors have given the guns to some of the people that were their victims, and those people are now guarding and keeping their fellow, and there's kids in that movie. It's this really twisted thing where the most disturbing thing of that entire film when I saw it was the fact that you see all of these people are victims together, and then to save themselves from the horrible things that happen in that film, they start to ally themselves and use favoritism of their captors to keep each other down. And so I don't know. That's a whole thing that we could probably debate forever, and human nature and all this stuff. But in this story, it keeps going back to that idea of somebody's training and can they be switched, and it's really cool how they keep throwing those things at you, even at the very end, and we'll talk about that there, the little conversation that we get between Dredd and Kraken at some point in this.
Well, they're really, like, the Judda and the judges are just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, well, the Judda are probably genetically augmented, but the judges are too.
Certainly, yeah.
And it's all obedience. And it's just, or it's like politics. I don't care if the guy in there is doing shitty things as long as it's my guy.
Yeah, right. Here you got a couple panels where they're getting in to do their operation, and Dredd basically tells the cadets, like, it's now or never. You're gonna have to kill people. You have silencers. You're gonna be doing all the shooting, and we get just a little panel there of our favorite dude, Giant Junior, son Giant Junior, taking out some people he's been training to become one of them, but.
And it's a heavy thing because these cadets are probably in their early teens, and they're in the academy and they are training, but everything they've done in their short life has been training.
Yes.
And now they are thrust into the real world, and they're killing people. I mean, no matter what, that's got to be some PTSD on them.
Yeah, and they've been trained to apprehend and take out and kill criminals,
they're killing judges.
They're killing their own kind.
They have to, because their own kind's hell-bent on killing them for their own survival.
Yeah. And so, so they managed to commandeer the H-Wagon, and they know the location. And I thought it was cool that it brings back this thing that happened earlier, was when Necropolis hit, when the Sisters of Death came down, and they were on, all of a sudden they're in Mega City. Remember that scene where everybody stopped?
And looks around, yeah.
What would they say, like 40-year men or 20-year men stopped, and the criminals
babies
stopped.
cried. And
yeah, so there's a reverse of that. When Judge Dredd finally has this H-Wagon en route to go take out Kit, the same thing happens in reverse to the Dark Judges. They stop.
Yeah, that's even, like, fire. I think he's probably just looking at birds. He's just so confused.
There is a panel there where it says something is wrong in Dark Judge speech, which is the something is wrong.
Yeah, lots of S's.
And everybody's looking up in the sky, but Fire does really look particularly oblivious.
Look at that. He's like cloud gazing, and that one looks like a birdie.
And
so they know. I don't know. I don't think at this point Anderson has dropped her shielding. But they can tell, like, something. The sisters know.
Well, and her last effort, I believe, is a trick on the sisters.
Yeah, she
does the old holographic Judge Anderson trick, but with psychic ability.
That had to have taken every last bit of her energy, because they're on the H-Wagon. The sisters find them, and the sisters descend on the H-Wagon with Dredd en route, and Dredd just head down, sticks forward, and Anderson just pulls everything back and shoves it into this hologram, or this apparition of herself, where she astral projects and kicks the door, and the sisters bite on it.
Yeah.
And then just an illusion, and it's just enough time to get the sisters off of the H-Wagon, and Joe closes in, and good Lord.
He put it, it's very
it's
unceremonious.
Like all the ordnance on the H-Wagon. And the last panel of Kit,
it's Kit's lower half being
blown off of her upper half. Like, that's Kit's tombstone.
And it's cool. It says Kit Agi. I think that's what we established her last name was.
Mercifully released from her torment.
Mercifully released, and then right under it, her merciful release is just like her legs.
Her legs and her upper body being in two different places at the same time. But yeah, the door's shut, and since the sisters were only able to occupy Mega City 1 via the bridge through Kit, they're done. They're gone. And finally, blue skies.
Everything looks better. Except we still have some Dark Judge
We've got
action.
4 Dark Judges, and we've got our Stockholm Syndrome judges.
And this is what I like to call the Army of Darkness. Let's get the hell out of here moment, because as the Dark Judges do continue to fight, but it's really kind of hopeless.
Oh yeah, they're done. Without the sisters, they don't really have a chance in this fight because they are out in the open.
There's a real nice anguished looking Fire and Death looking up at the sky.
Fire does get one parting shot. He sets 3 judges on fire.
Yeah, well, they realize the people in the city are now starting to come out of that fog of whatever it was, Necropolis, fog, Stockholm Syndrome, everything
Mass
that was
psychosis.
keeping them, and they see just massive piles of bodies.
Yeah, just all of a sudden soberly aware of what happened and what they've done, because Kraken lets on later that Judge Death left enough of his consciousness attached in his body while he was possessed to know what he was doing, but not be able to stop himself.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that was because that's how Death operates.
Well, and this is still happening because even when the blue skies hit and everyone else is snapping out of it, Kraken's still killing.
Yeah, he's still choking somebody.
And he's saying, I can't stop. Mm-hmm. It's fucking tragic for this character.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
I'm assuming that's the judges that were actually possessed. That's probably what they were doing too. Death, probably being the sociopath he is, left enough of their consciousness intact to where they could see where the car was going, but they couldn't move the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And they just had to watch the horror show. Yeah.
We get a few pages here, too, where Dredd and Magruder are trying to convince people that they are who they are.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's
a
hard sell here.
They're like, who's this old man and Judge Death? You know, they finally convince them because their voice scans check out or whatever, and they manage to send a medevac to Anderson, whose body is still in horrible shape, psychically drained.
In the Undercity, where, down in New York, where they built the...
Don't get me started again. Oh, my God. So we start seeing all the Dark Judges laid to waste.
Yeah, it's game over. You got Mortis.
He gets high-X'd.
I like Mortis and Fear because they seem to be the team, and then Fire and Death seem to roll together. Mortis just gets shot to pieces and both he and Fear get high-X'd.
And Fart ghosted out.
Yeah, well, Mortis goes Fart ghost. I think Fear escapes.
Oh, that's right. Fear gets his later. He gets boinged here in just a few.
Fear keeps his physical body, but Mortis Fart ghosts out. They hit Fear with just unceremoniously 3 panels. He's done. The boing.
Now
you can see the boing canister in the background while Fear's still trying to work, and he's just done.
And you gotta love the dedication, because I think we've established that Boing is pretty fucking dorky. But they're bringing it back. This is like...
I love how the canisters even have like a fun logo on them.
This is the greatest 2000 AD Judge Dredd story, bar none, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And they still bring back the fucking Boing, even though...
Well, it's a tried and true method. It's airtight. They can't fart ghost out of it.
That's true. And so we go back to our man, Judge Death, who's making a run for it.
Well, he's still, just elbow deep in murder, too. He is not stopping. Fire. God bless him. He's still just hanging. I think he's too dumb to realize what's happening.
Oh, I love Judge Fire.
I love him, too.
You gotta give him a break.
Oh, he is the Ringo Starr of the Dark Judges.
He is. But at some point here, even Judge Death can't stand up to just the massive number of bullets that they're putting into his body.
He gets just riddled.
But in one final attempt, he jumps out how many stories?
He's in a walkway. Yeah, he's hundreds and hundreds of stories up,
and he disappears.
Yeah, they never. I kind of like it. Have you read The Dark Knight Returns?
You know what? I've read it once.
Okay, well, there's the part in the carnival where Batman and Joker have the final showdown, and they fight in the Tunnel of Love, and they're both just broken. And it kind of reminds me of that, like Death, his back up against the wall, and he knows this physical form's number is up, and he just doesn't care. And whereas the Joker laughs and breaks his own neck, Death just flings his physical. His body's going to get destroyed, but he's goddamned if the judges are going to do it. He just hurls it out of the window.
Yeah, and he's the only dark judge in this that does not get.
Yeah, he's never accounted for.
Doesn't get captured.
Fart ghosts out, and they suck him up in an airlock.
Well, yeah, they would. I'm assuming they turned off all of the air in the room that he was in, so his fire went out.
You would think
The little light of mine no longer shines for fire, and so they're able to boing him now.
So they've got Mortis and Fire are Fart Ghost Boing.
Yeah,
and Fear still has his physical form, but he's all boinged up.
And that brings us to the the final business for Dredd.
This is really... Kraken's a very compelling character.
Yeah.
Any way you look at him, regardless of your side of this discussion, he is super compelling, and it's just been a hell of a ride for Kraken.
And they meet face to face. Dredd, old pruny Judge Death looking Dredd, and Kraken still wearing the Dredd badge, the imposter,
missing a hand.
And it's grim. And at this point, Kraken, this is like our argument. Kraken concedes.
He's very much like the Fargo line. He is very stoic in the end.
Well, but he says maybe you're right, Dredd. I was flawed. And then Dredd's response, though, again, goes to the opposite side, and he says, maybe I was right about you, maybe I wasn't. It's hard to say. So even Dredd at that point admits that
he may have been wrong.
Things could have been different.
Dredd's got a lot. There's a lot of personal growth for Dredd in Necropolis. He's gone through a lot. He's not the same Joe we start Necropolis with at all.
Yeah. Oh.
But my God, this end.
And he tells him that really no blame is going to be attached. You could have helped it.
Yeah.
And he...
Thanks.
Yeah, he thanks.
And then...
Kraken says thank you to Joe, and Joe shoots him in the chest. Through the badge.
Yeah, just boom. Punched. He's done.
It's grim.
Well, I think even Kraken knew that he wasn't going to live through this. Regardless of what had happened, the crimes committed during Necropolis. And I'm sure that's not the first judge or the last judge Joe shot that day.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were summary street executions all into the night.
Do you think it's incredibly symbolic that essentially Dredd kills himself?
Yeah, because I think the Dredd we knew died in this story.
Definitely.
Because Joe's not the same after this. So it's very metaphorical. Joe killing basically himself for all intents and purposes.
And the whole time I'm reading this, my brain keeps going, like I pick up little things like this and how everything weaves together and how it comes back, and I keep going, like, is John Wagner really that great of a writer that he meant for that to happen? And it's so purposeful.
It's
and
really
goal
well
directed.
written. Yeah.
Like it's really, to me, this is leagues above anything else. Like it's so well done.
It's a very, very weighty story. It's a very deep story, and it's purposeful. And you get to see Joe, the old Joe, the Joe that's not real sure about his belief, his staunch belief in the Justice Department always being right, literally versus his younger self, who was idealistic and believed. And even his younger self would have reacted the way Kraken reacted to him in the early part of this story.
Yeah, I can think of very few stories in other, outside of 2000 AD that go this deep for me, that I can really dig into this much. And the amazing thing is all of that occurs with fart ghosts and boing. I mean, it's great. And there was one more thing that I...
It wouldn't be 2000 AD if there wasn't that...
The zany element.
The gallows humor amidst the weighty story.
Yeah. One last thing about that little interaction there after Dredd is finished with his unfortunate business. Someone says something to the effect of, that couldn't have been easy or something like that. And Dredd's response is, take it from me. He didn't want to live. He didn't want this. Or something to that effect.
And I would agree with that after what Kraken... And Kraken knew. Well, Kraken saw everything he did.
Well, and I think that's and that's the thing. Like the biggest nightmare is abandoning your post for Dredd.
Yeah.
Is abandoning your post, is failing at your duty, whatever that is. You know. And it's the line is actually couldn't let him live, not now. And then as he walks away from Kraken's dead body, he says, "Take it from me, he didn't want to." Almost basically acknowledging that is me.
Yeah.
You know, I know because I'm him.
Yeah.
And he didn't. I think it's that he didn't realize, you know, his aversion to Kraken, and that's what goes back to like enforcing my belief that it could have been changed. Is that his aversion to Kraken at the beginning of the story really comes down to sort of an aversion to the person that he was and the evolution that he has now.
The person that he is now, yeah.
And I question that for myself. If I met myself 15 years ago, would I be like, oh my God, who's this fucking guy?
I would kick my own ass. I was an unmitigated, mouthy prick.
Wait, when is this?
Shut up. I was overly opinionated and just stuck up my own ass.
Yeah. Oh, me too. I if I meet 15 years ago me, I'm self-centered, and I don't take in other people's emotions in.
Not the grown-up, mature adults we are today on our comic book
yes,
podcast.
That's true. Yeah, but you know that's it. Like was the whole evaluation process. Kraken's, his day where he goes out with Judge Dredd to be evaluated was really Dredd evaluating himself and finding himself lacking.
Yeah.
Whew, that's heavy as fuck, man.
I mean, can you imagine that? You are literally evaluating your younger self.
Yeah.
And that younger self has all those ideals and life views that you had at that age. And Dredd, maybe he hated the fact that he was looking at himself from where he wasn't at the beginning of Necropolis.
Yeah, and at the same time, your younger self
hates.
Your younger self is better. It has all of the youth. It has the zest, and it has the ability to perform the tasks to their absolute, perfect degree. But the energy that you use that on is something that you probably wouldn't today.
It's got a less informed worldview.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all the data that the old you has.
Yeah.
And to close out, we've got and this last little chapter it's hilarious because you've got, and this isn't hilarious, but it's the cleanup post Necropolis, just
60 million
fucking bulldozers and just mass graves in the cursed earth, and that's not the funny part. That's really fucking grim.
60 million bodies and then a joke.
Yeah, and then a joke. So we see. They're missing at this point. This is before they have all the Dark Judges accounted for. They've tracked Mortis down. And Mortis is desperately trying to find physical form.
I love these people.
And it's dead bodies. And he's getting frustrated that he can't find a live corpse to inhabit.
Well, luckily, Anderson comes in like fucking Professor X.
In a rubber round.
In a floaty wheelchair.
And look, she hisses. She gives him some sass.
Yeah.
Because Mortis hisses at her, the Henderson. And I can only assume she goes, Mortis. Like she's getting all sassy. And then, she
sucks him up in her head like a Ghostbusters trap and says, let's go fucking put this guy in some boing.
I love their boing spiritual forms. Like, I love it. And they never account for death. That's the only one.
He's still out there.
Well, in some form.
And she...
that body had to have bounced and exploded.
After going through everything she's gone through, it's almost like she has certain and perfect control over the spirit forms of the Dark Jedi.
Oh, yeah.
She's really made them her fucking bitches.
Oh, yeah. And that's... I think Anderson's heroics in Necropolis are a little downplayed. Without her... None of this. They don't beat them. Without Anderson, they don't. Without her shielding them from the sisters, without them protecting Dredd and Magruder and the cadets en route to securing the H-Wagon and to ending this doesn't happen. The sisters would have fell on them like that and had the Dark Judges and whatever Stockholm judges there to kill them.
Yeah.
So I think Anderson's the linchpin in all this. Well, Kraken and Dredd is the meat of the story. Necropolis is ongoing without Anderson. she's the one that shuts it down.
Yeah. And the final panel, they walk off
Into the sunset. Until the next time.
Well, until their next adventure, anyways. But this is our favorite.
Oh, I love it.
Highlights for me on this one is the miniature Judge Mortis horror movie that occurs in the middle of this thing.
It's so good. And seriously, if you guys and gals are reading along with us, pick up. It's Case Files 14. The colors are amazing. And yeah, the Mortis stuff is so good. A child dissolves.
Yeah. Carlos Esquera is at the height of his game when he's drawing Judge Mortis in this.
Oh, yeah.
I love all of the Dark Judges. I love the panel where they're standing together. But the single best thing in this visually is Judge Mortis melting down that little child. And he's screaming.
Oh, it's a horror show. Yeah, like he comes up out of nowhere. They drop him out of an H-Wagon and everything just goes to hell. And they're just like 14-year-old kids that are having to deal with Mortis. Just the colors. I love the first appearance of the sisters in Mega City 1, where everything goes cold, and they just decimate the Justice Department's forces, and they have the Justice Department forces decimate themselves. It's the colors, the art. I think this is Carlos, or was Carlos at his best. This is
I would agree. It's my favorite thing that he's done, and it's strange because I don't even necessarily identify this as like Carlos is my favorite Dredd artist, but this is exactly what I think of when I think of any of these characters. When I think of the Dark Judges, I think of his Dark Judges, and that's it's the archetype. So
this supplants Boland's.
Oh yeah, in a weird way, like I said, I can recognize that his Dark Judges have this sort of more realistic. I don't know what it is.
They're more tangible physiologically.
Yeah,
I like their exaggerated look because I think they should be more exaggerated because they're metaphysical beings.
And just the colors in this too. And
oh my god, the color palette, and it's so good. The greens, the purples, the blues, the pinks. They're not. Up to that point, they're not really colors you would have seen in Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
And if you look at
choices.
All of the year preceding Necropolis and the year after Necropolis, you could see Carlos bringing those colors into his art.
Yeah, like it was the coming.
Yeah, it was like creeping in. And I don't know if that was meant to be how I was supposed to read it, but it's definitely how I'm taking it. It was this creeping foreshadowing of Necropolis. And
so good.
Easily my favorite Dredd story. And that's saying something.
Yeah.
From 25 years of reading Dredd. Like I said, if you are listening and haven't read it, go read it. Go Case Files 14. You can get it on the app. You can get it in a physical form.
We really created this podcast so that we could.
This is the impetus of this podcast is let's talk about Necropolis for the 800th time, but this time we'll record it.
And if you're not sure how good this is, we've talked for 3 hours and 11 minutes.
Yeah, and I think we could have gone more in depth too. We'll do a director's cut.
We'll do a director's cut. But for now, I think we should go ahead and get out of here. I don't know if this is going to be uploaded as a single episode. I'm going to try.
You're going to Kill Bill it?
I'm worried that there's some limit, but if there's not, it's going to be a single episode and
strap
you're
in,
fucking
kids.
Long haul. Yeah, so
hey, it's the end of season 1, right?
This is the end of season 1. If you're still listening and you want to know what's coming, and we have to organize our recordings in the form of seasons because that helps us to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, or else we just sit here and week to week be chaos.
Yeah. So season 2 is going to have a mix of longer quote-unquote epics like Necropolis, and then we're going to switch off for some episodes where we do a shorter story together, and then we each bring in one that the other host has not read. We're also going to bring in some guests, and we're also starting a new thing where we're going to pick up on the Dredd that came out each week, which is a big task.
One of us got the app to work finally.
Yeah, yes, you finally come around to the app side of things, and so we're going to talk about each week's 2000 AD Prague, primarily the Dredd story, and just briefly highlight any other little things that we found from the other Progs in an effort to influence the listener to join us and read 2000 AD every week. Because maybe if our friends here in the United States, I'm not excluding people that are not in the United States, but we really need people to read in the United States.
Yeah, we're trying to win converts over here.
That way, we don't have to drive 14 hours round trip to Day of Dread next year.
Yeah, so here's hoping, right? We're out here doing Dredd's work.
We certainly are.
Until next season, this is Cool Johnny Cool.
And this is Heavy Metal Kid.
And you've been listening to Cursed Earth Radio.
Keep listening, creeps.